Chapter 59. Xin Yu nudged Shang Junlin with his head. I'm talking to Her Majesty about serious matters. I know. Shang Junlin touched Xin Yu's forehead. We discovered it early this time, so it's not difficult to investigate. Those who participated in it will be disqualified. You? Don't worry. I've already made adjustments to the questions this time, so there won't be any problems. Shang Junlin knew that someone wanted to tamper with the imperial examinations, so how could he sit still and wait for his death? He had already made adjustments to the questions that needed to be changed. In order to prevent the new questions from being leaked, those who participated in the revision of the questions had to live in the manner that he arranged for them. The manor was heavily guarded, so if they wanted to spread the news to the outside world, they would be exposed first. Xin Yu nodded and began to talk about what Jiang Huiqing and the others had discovered during this period of time. Jiang Huiqing wrote in the letter that those people had a clear goal. Most of them were from humble families. A few who were close to Jiang Huiqing were also targeted. After he told them about it, he found that a few of them were targeted. Xin Yu thought, they saw that Her Majesty likes to use officials from humble families, so they plan to use their own people first? Shang Junlin, no matter whether they succeed or not, these people will leave evidence that can be used against them. If they want to continue their official career, they can only work for the person behind the scenes. Xin Yu, that's right. And the higher those people go in the future, the more beneficial it will be for the person behind the scenes. It's such a good deal. They can effortlessly turn these people into their own people. But Xin Yu looked down to hide the coldness in his eyes. Whether it was in his previous life or this time, that person's goal would not succeed. Yingxing Tower. As the exam day approached, the number of people in the building decreased. The students stayed in their own places and made their final preparations. Jiang Huiqing's impetuous heart gradually calmed down. After talking with young Master Yu, he roughly knew that young Master Lin and young Master Yu's background was not simple. They were most likely not the candidates this time. Brother Cheng Yu is as calm as ever. Jiang Huiqing walked over from the window. Having known He Cheng Yu for so long, Jiang Huiqing had never seen He Cheng Yu's expression change. The surrounding students were getting more and more nervous. Only He Cheng Yu remained the same. Even he himself had been anxious some time ago, but his state of mind had only slowly recovered in the past 2 days. It's just an exam. Didn't Huiqing perform as usual? He Cheng Yu smiled faintly. Jiang Huiqing patted his chest and said, although I don't show it on my face, what happened a while ago really scared me. I've been feeling uneasy for a few days now. I don't know if Brother Cheng Yu has noticed, but those people's targets seem to be poor students. After these days of observation, Jiang Huiqing came to this conclusion. He Cheng Yu nodded. Yes, I did. I've asked the students from the other clans, but they haven't encountered anything similar. It seems that their goal is very clear. Jiang Huiqing rubbed his chin. They're picking people according to His Majesty's preferences. When the previous emperor was on the throne, the poor were suppressed by the aristocratic families to the point that they almost had no place to stand. After the current emperor ascended the throne, a group of poor officials were slowly raised. The exam is about to start. I don't know if this matter can be completely resolved before it starts. Under everyone's anticipation, the day of the exam finally arrived. In the morning, the students brought their tools. After checking that there were no mistakes, they entered the exam room one by one. Everyone's attention was on the exam itself. No one noticed that a small number of students were quietly taken away before they entered the exam room. After the students entered the exam room, a well-prepared arrest operation was secretly carried out. The evidence was conclusive. Without giving anyone any chance to resist, several inconspicuous people were quietly taken away. As the weather warmed up, the flowers in the garden bloomed, especially in Yuzhong Palace. Knowing that Xin Yu liked flowers and plants, Shang Junlin sent people to bring over many rare flowers and plants. Recently, a top-quality ink orchid was presented. Shang Junlin didn't even think and had people send it to Yuzhong Palace. Eunuch Ming personally led people to move it. He finally understood that if there was something good, it should be directly sent to Yuzhong Palace. Didn't he see that His Majesty was only staying overnight in Yuzhong Palace? Since Shun Yu entered the palace, Shang Junlin almost never returned to the emperor's bedroom. Even Eunuch Ming had a room to rest in Yuzhong Palace. His Majesty specially sent this slave to send this. See if you like it. Eunuch Ming lifted the red silk covering the top. Layers of blooming petals came into view. Xin Yu's eyes lit up. Where did His Majesty get such a top-quality ink orchid? It was sent by the servants. It just arrived in the palace today. His Majesty sent this slave to send it to you. His Majesty is considerate. Xin Yu found a suitable place for the ink orchid to grow and asked the palace servants to move the ink orchid there. Eunuch Ming was ready to leave after sending the things. Xin Yu stopped him. I wonder if Eunuch Ming can change the head eunuch of Yuzhong Palace? Eunuch Ming paused. Why does His Majesty suddenly want to change people? The palace servants of Yuzhong Palace were all arranged by Shang Junlin. At that time, Shun Yu had just entered the palace. Shang Junlin's requirement was that people with clean backgrounds should not cause trouble. Eunuch Ming also let his subordinates do the selection. Later, Xin Yu was favored, and countless people regretted not being able to work in Yuzhong Palace. Eunuch Ming also regretted it. If he knew that Yuzhong Palace could be so popular because of Shun Yu, he would have arranged a position for his people. However, the matter was a foregone conclusion. It was useless to regret it. Xin Yu had never asked about the palace servants. Suddenly, he said that he wanted to change people. First, pick a group of people according to my requirements. After all, if you want to live for a long time, the people you use naturally need to be handy. Shun Yu stated his requirements: loyal, not gossiping, adaptable, understanding, and easy to use. As for the rest, I will have to trouble Eunuch Ming to put more effort into it. His Majesty is too kind. His Majesty can rest assured that this slave will do well for His Majesty. Eunuch Ming respectfully responded. Those who could serve in front of the emperor were all experienced people. Eunuch Ming could tell that the previous head eunuch had made His Majesty unhappy. Eunuch Ming couldn't figure it out. His Majesty was already a rare master who was easy to serve. What did the head eunuch of Yuzhong Palace do to make His Majesty want to change people? And when His Majesty said that he wanted to live for a long time, did he mean that he didn't plan to live for a long time, so everything was dispensable? Eunuch Ming lowered his eyes to hide the deep thought in his eyes. He began to think about the candidates that met Shan Yu's requirements. I'm very relieved when you do things. After explaining, Xin Yu didn't intend to care about this matter. Eunuch Ming returned to Shang Junlin to report. After he finished talking about Shan Yu's reaction, he hesitated for a while and then told him that Xin Yu wanted to change people. Shang Junlin thought about the head eunuch of Yuzhong Palace. He didn't have much of an impression. When he was in Yuzhong Palace, Eunuch Ming had always been the one who served him. Xin Yu didn't like people to serve him. Other than Mu Shi, there were few other palace servants who served him. Did His Majesty say the reason? From what Shang Junlin knew about Xin Yu, he wasn't a person who spoke with a goal in mind. No, Eunuch Ming shook his head. He only said that he didn't like to use him. Shang Junlin, go investigate that head eunuch. If His Majesty wants to change people, then let him do it. This time, choose the people carefully. Eunuch Ming, this slave understands. Shang Junlin, after you choose the people, let me have a look first. Don't find someone who will make His Majesty worry. Eunuch Ming, yes. Xin Yu watered Mo Lan with some water and put down his rolled-up sleeves. He saw Shang Junlin walk in. Your Majesty, are you done with your work? Shang Junlin took a handkerchief from the side and wiped Shan Yu's hands. Why don't you let the servants do these things? Of course, the flowers sent by Your Majesty have to be taken care of. Otherwise, what if Your Majesty doesn't like Junling one day? Junling was sent by Imperial Physician Gu. Because it was difficult to take care of, Xin Yu had always taken care of it personally. Shang Junlin had been jealous of it several times. You even know how to tease me? Shang Junlin poked Xin Yu's forehead. Xin Yu dodged to the side. Your Majesty, why don't you let others talk about what you did? Okay, you can say whatever you want. Shang Junlin held Shan Yu's hand and led him to the soft couch to sit down. Why do you suddenly want to change people to serve you? Eunuch Ming has announced to Your Majesty. Xin Yu was not surprised that Eunuch Ming would tell Shang Junlin about this matter. He told Eunuch Ming because he had the intention of using Eunuch Ming to tell Shang Junlin about this matter. Xinyu, it's not like you don't know how much I care about your matters. How would Ming Chang dare to hide it? It was Mu Shi who found out. He took advantage of his position as the eunuch in charge of Yuzhong Palace and bullied the palace maids in the palace. He didn't dare to touch the people in Yuzhong Palace, so he touched the people in other palaces. Shun Yu's face was full of disgust. I have already asked Mu Shi to make a list of the palace maids who were bullied. If it wasn't for a palace maid who had a strong temper and made a fuss, who knows how long this matter would have been hidden. Shang Junlin's aura became heavy. Who gave him the courage to run amok? Maybe it's because your majesty usually doesn't care about the palace maid's matters, so he thinks he can be unscrupulous because he is the eunuch in charge of Yuzhong Palace. When Xinyu first found out, he almost killed him directly. It was Mu Shi who stopped him. Young master, this kind of thing is actually not uncommon in the palace. This time, Eunuch Li was dealt with. Next time, there will be Eunuch Zhao and Eunuch Sunday. We must put an end to this phenomenon. We must make them not dare to do it even if they want to. Mu Shi said. The more beautiful the surface, the easier it was to hide filth. When the water was too clear, there would be no fish. Xinyu was not a young master who lived in a castle in the sky. He had seen the dark side of the world many times. He knew that in the palace, which was the center of power in Dahuan, no matter how shocking it was not surprising. Let Ming Chang deal with it. Xinyu reached out and pressed his hand against Shang Junlin's lips. No, since it's a crime committed by someone from Yuzhong Palace, I should be the one to deal with this matter. To dare do such a thing under my nose, I want to see who gave him the guts. For the first time, Xinyu showed such a fierce side in front of Shang Junlin. The beauty's temperament was like ice, and there was a biting chill between his eyebrows. Shang Junlin looked at him quietly and felt his heart beating faster and faster. Usually, Xinyu was gentle and harmless. Occasionally, he would show his small fangs. He did not look like a predator, but more like a cub that had not grown up yet. He was less intimidating. But now, Xinyu was different. A dangerous aura seeped out from inside, with a breathtaking beauty. At a certain moment, Shang Junlin felt that this was the real Xinyu. Full of aggression, danger, and charm. He almost could not move his eyes away. Seeing that Shang Junlin did not respond for a long time, Xinyu looked up in confusion. Your Majesty, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking. You is so beautiful. His voice was as low as a whisper. He wanted to pull her into his arms and kiss her fiercely, marking her as his from the inside out. Chapter 60. Feeling Shang Junlin's strong aggressive aura, Xinyu held his breath. He was even a little confused. Did he say something? How did he suddenly make Shang Junlin so interested? After thinking about it, Xinyu stepped back a little. No matter what the reason was, it was better for him to stay away from Shang Junlin, who was emitting a dangerous aura. Sensing his small movements, Shang Junlin blocked his way with one hand behind him. You? Why are you hiding? Xinyu played dumb. What did your Majesty say? Shang Junlin didn't want to make things difficult for him, so he restrained his aura. What does you plan to do? It was unknown when Shang Junlin changed the way he addressed Xinyu from Guijun to a you. Xinyu gradually got used to it. Change the eunuch in charge of Yuzhong Palace first, then we'll talk. We'll do as you says. I'll choose the newcomer first. I won't allow the same thing to happen a second time. This time, the eunuch in charge of Yuzhong Palace got into trouble. In the end, it was his fault for not paying attention to him. If he had carefully checked the eunuch before appointing him, the current situation wouldn't have happened. Thank you, Your Majesty. Xinyu narrowed his eyes. He always knew that a dike of 1,000 miles could collapse because of an ant's nest. He didn't expect the people who worked under him to be flawless, but he couldn't tolerate people who had no bottom line. Since he was going to do it, Xinyu ordered Mu Shi to check all the people in Yuzhong Palace. In the past, he didn't think that he would live in Yuzhong Palace for a long time. He didn't have high requirements for the palace servants who served him, and he wouldn't send them to do anything urgent. Usually, he was easy to talk to, which encouraged some people's ambitions. Xinyu was favored, so Yuzhong Palace also rose. The palace servants who served in Yuzhong Palace were much more prestigious than those in other places. The rules of survival in the palace had always been like this. Xinyu didn't plan to change anything, but he didn't want to see someone use his name to make trouble. Eunuch Ming quickly selected a candidate and immediately showed it to Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin's gaze swept across the name list one by one. When he saw a certain name, he paused and looked up with a faint smile. If I remember correctly, this Ming Yuan is your godson, right? Yes, yes. Eunuch Ming didn't dare to lie. This servant found these people according to your request. This servant has seen Ming Yuan since he was young. This servant knows his character better than anyone else. This servant boldly added his name to the list. After he finished speaking, Eunuch Ming was a little nervous and added, I added Ming Yuan's name because I had selfish motives. Firstly, I know his background. Secondly, Your Highness is a master who is easy to serve. It is Ming Yuan's fortune to be able to serve Your Highness. Shang Junlin stroked the edge of the name list with uncertainty in his eyes. Eunuch Ming's heart jumped even higher. He smiled bitterly in his heart. He really didn't want to let go of this opportunity, so he boldly indulged his selfish motives. This servant knows that you value this godson very much. However, you can't go too far. This servant has looked at the name list. They all meet Your Highness's requirements. Send them to Your Highness. As for who can stay, it will be up to Your Highness. Shang Junlin glanced at Eunuch Ming lightly and threw the name list into his arms. This servant thanks Your Majesty for your grace. Eunuch Ming hugged the scroll. The big stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. Go. Shang Junlin waved his hand. Yes. Eunuch Ming hugged the scroll, bowed, and left. Eunuch Ming didn't dare to delay. He brought the selected people to Yuzhong Palace. Xinyu was taking care of the mo lawn that Shang Junlin sent. He didn't know how he took care of this flower. Even though the flowering period was over, it still bloomed very well. Young master, Eunuch Ming has brought people here. Mu Shi stepped forward to clean Shan Yu's hands. So soon? Shan Yu cleaned his hands and took a handkerchief to dry them. Send people to the main hall. Mu Shi received the order and left. Xin Yu changed his outer robe and went out. When Xin Yu arrived, Eunuch Ming was already waiting in the main hall with people. Xin Yu walked to the main seat and sat down. Eunuch Ming introduced the people that he brought to Shan Yu one by one. Eunuch Ming, thank you for your trouble. Eunuch Ming smiled kindly. Your Highness is too kind. Please take a look and see if there are any satisfactory candidates. If none of them are suitable, this servant will bring another batch. No need to be so troublesome. These people already meet my requirements. Xin Yu pointed at a few people. These people will stay first. The rest of you can leave. The other people bowed and respectfully left. Ming Yuan was among the people that Xin Yu left. Eunuch Ming's smile deepened. Xin Yu tested the remaining people and finally kept Ming Yuan. Later, Shang Junlin came over. Why did you choose Ming Yuan? Shang Junlin hugged Xin Yu and walked to the side of the couch to sit down. Does you know the relationship between Ming Yuan and Ming Chong? Xin Yu shook his head. What's the relationship between them? I chose Ming Yuan because I like his style of doing things. Yuzhong Palace is too eye-catching. The people under it must be managed by someone reliable. That's Ming Cheng's godson. He's very scheming. He knew that Yuzhong Palace was a good place to go, so he sent his godson here. Eunuch Ming really has good taste. Xin Yu leaned on the man's shoulder. It seems that Her Majesty really likes me. Even the favorite of the emperor thinks that working in my palace is promising. Shang Junlin thought that Xin Yu would be dissatisfied. He didn't expect him to have such a reaction. Zhen thought you would be angry. What's there to be angry about? Xin Yu smiled. Her Majesty saw the person first. If there was a problem, Her Majesty wouldn't send the person to me, right? A Yu's mouth is better than anyone else. Shang Junlin pinched Xin Yu's chin and turned it to face him. His thumb rubbed Xin Yu's lips. Xin Yu blinked. I'm just telling the truth. Why is Her Majesty looking at me like this? Zhen is thinking, did you have a candidate in mind from the beginning? Did you go around in a big circle just to let Ming Yuan take the initiative to come to Yuzhong Palace? Shang Junlin's eyes darkened. It wasn't hard to guess. Otherwise, as a noble, Shun Yu could have any eunuch he wanted. He went around in such a big circle. It was just that the person's identity was different, so it wasn't easy to mention it. Shen Yu pretended to be confused. He blinked innocently. What are you talking about, Your Majesty? Little fox. Shang Junlin leaned closer and kissed the young man's eyes. Shen Yu was startled by the sudden breath. He didn't have time to react before he felt a warm touch on his eyes. The warm touch fell on his eyelids. The words he didn't have time to say were completely forgotten. Looking at Shen Yu's dazed expression, Shang Junlin's eyes became deeper and deeper. His lips gradually moved down. The moment his lips were about to touch, Eunuch Ming's voice sounded from outside the screen. Her Majesty, Fong Darren requests an audience. As if waking up from a dream, Shen Yu suddenly broke free and said uncomfortably, "Since Your Majesty has something to do, you can go and do it first." Shang Junlin secretly sighed that he missed a good opportunity. He rubbed Shen Yu's head and got up to leave. Shen Yu sat on the soft couch for a while. The confusion in his eyes gradually faded. Candidates were not allowed to leave the examination hall during the examination period. They ate and lived in the examination hall. They didn't know that in just a few days, the outside world was in chaos. Shang Junlin's people finally found clues and caught the mastermind behind the scenes. In the imperial court, Fong Darren reported what he found in a deep voice. Finally, he bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, please make a decision." There was an uproar. How is this possible? This is a matter that shakes the foundation of the country. Could Fong Darren be mistaken? Fong Darren glared at him. "Do you think I would joke about this?" "I didn't mean that." The person who spoke shut his mouth embarrassedly. "The evidence is conclusive. Your Majesty, please punish him severely." Looking at the righteous Fong Darren, the ministers felt as if they had returned to the day when Censor Zhang was implicated. Amidst the whispers, Shang Junlin's cold voice sounded. "Ministers, please take a look at Fong Darren's evidence before you speak." The eunuch in front of the imperial court held up the scroll and read it aloud. From how to get the exam questions to how to order people to get close to the students and lure them into the trap, everything was explained clearly. After a moment of silence, Shang Junlin slowly opened his mouth. "Does the Grand Commandant have anything to say to defend yourself?" The Grand Commandant couldn't argue with the evidence. He knelt down dejectedly. "I know my mistake." The Grand Commandant was an old minister from the previous dynasty. He didn't suffer any losses during the change of power because he chose sides in time. On the contrary, when Shang Junlin ascended the throne, he became an important minister and was active until now. Shang Junlin stood up from the dragon throne and looked down emotionlessly. "Grand Commandant, don't be in a hurry to admit your guilt. Tell me, what benefits did the previous emperor give you that you are still willing to work for him after more than 10 years? "I wouldn't dare." The Grand Commandant's heart skipped a beat. "Why wouldn't you dare? Do you regret that you didn't kill me on the battlefield so that King Yu could take the throne?" Shang Junlin's words caused an uproar. No one would have thought that an attempted cheating case would involve the secrets of the past. Not long after Shang Junlin ascended the throne, he was seriously injured in a battle. However, before he recovered, the news was kept secret. Not many people knew about it, and even fewer people knew about it. "Your Majesty, I am innocent. I was possessed and tampered with the imperial examinations. However, I really didn't do what Your Majesty said." The Grand Commandant was shocked. The first incident was enough to convict his entire family. If the second incident was added, what's more, he only wanted to gain a foothold in the imperial court. He didn't have the intention nor the ability to break through the heavy guards and attack Shang Junlin. Looking at the Grand Commandant who was trembling like a leaf, Shang Junlin's mouth faintly curved up. Of course, he knew that the Grand Commandant didn't do it. He deliberately said it so that he could pass the information to someone through the spies in the imperial court. He knew that what happened that year wasn't an accident, and he would investigate it thoroughly. The Grand Commandant was taken away with a pale face. After the court was dismissed, only Lord Fong stayed. The two talked in the imperial study for the whole afternoon. After Lord Fong left, the Supreme Court began to deal with the Grand Commandant's case. Shen Yu leaned against Shang Junlin's chest through his clothes. "So, Your Majesty was lying to me last time? This injury wasn't left when you were young? It's my fault." Shang Junlin smiled bitterly. He told Xinyu about what happened in the imperial court today. He didn't expect Xinyu to focus on this. Someone actually attacked your majesty after you ascended the throne? Xinyu thought for a while and felt that it wasn't strange. Whether it was in the previous life or this life, King Yu had always been eyeing the throne. Originally, Xinyu thought that King Yu was the only one who coveted the throne. Now, it seemed that it was far from the case. Other than those who coveted the throne on the surface, there were many people who secretly coveted it. It was just that they didn't dare to show it because of Shang Junlin's power. Xinyu pressed the wound according to his memory. Your Majesty, does it hurt? Shang Junlin held Shan Yu's hand on his chest. You? Does your heart ache? Chapter 61. If I don't care about your Majesty, who will care about you? Your Majesty, please don't get hurt again. Shan Yu's eyes drooped slightly. Shang Junlin was envious. He held Shan Yu's chin with one hand and slowly approached him. A soft kiss fell on the corner of his eyes. It had the scent of a man, strong, steady, and reliable. Shang Junlin liked to kiss Shan Yu's eyes recently, especially when he looked at Shang Junlin. The concentration and color in his eyes made Shang Junlin unable to let go. Shan Yu's eyelids drooped. His long eyelashes gently swept across the man's lips, making him feel a little itchy. Shang Junlin released Shan Yu's hand from his hand and wrapped it around his waist. He tightened his arms and pulled Shan Yu closer to him. Shan Yu let him kiss him for a while and said, "It's time to close the net about Prince Yu. Only one Grand Commandant was fished out, but it's enough. If there's one, there will be a second, a third. That's not necessarily true." Shan Yu leaned on Shang Junlin's chest and looked at him. Your Majesty, why did the Grand Commandant tamper with the Imperial examination? You wants to blame Prince Yu for what the Grand Commandant did? Shang Junlin thought for a while and reacted. Otherwise, why would the Grand Commandant bribe a poor student who hasn't entered the Imperial court yet? What if it was Prince Yu's idea? Prince Yu lives in his fief all year round. What made him want to plant his own people in the Imperial court? Shan Yu chuckled. It doesn't matter if it was true or not, as long as we spread the news and let those people think so. Shang Junlin couldn't directly do anything to Prince Yu because of the late Emperor's will. But what if Prince Yu crossed the line himself? Prince Yu didn't know that he was sitting in prison, but the pot came from the sky. With the Emperor's personal order, the Supreme Court didn't dare to delay. They rushed to the end of the examination before it ended. The students heard such shocking news as soon as they came out of the examination hall. They forced themselves to gather together and wondered if they would be implicated. This was especially true for some of the people who had been found. Their faces turned pale, and they panicked, not knowing what to do. It was only after Shang Junlin had instructed the officials in advance to pacify the students that they were allowed to go back and rest. Jiang Huiqing had learned about what had happened in advance, and Shan Yu had also told him that the matter would be resolved after they left the examination hall. Jiang Huiqing found it unbelievable, but he didn't expect to hear the news as soon as he left the examination hall. After a good rest and replenishing his energy, Jiang Huiqing called He Qingyu to the hall for dinner. It wasn't easy to finish the exam, so it should be lively. To celebrate the end of the exam, Yingxing Tower held a free banquet to reward the students who worked hard. Everyone knew that this was a tradition of Yingxing Tower over the years, so no one refused. The hall was bustling with noise and excitement. Students who had just finished their exams gathered in groups of 3 to 5 to chat. As they chatted, they inevitably talked about the major events that had happened recently. I really didn't expect such a big thing to happen this year. Yes, it's fortunate that His Majesty had foresight and discovered that something was wrong. Otherwise, how could we possibly gather together and chat so comfortably? That's right, that's right. In the history of the Great Huan Dynasty, whenever there was a case of cheating, the results of that year would all be nullified. If it weren't for His Majesty's brilliance, we would have wasted another 3 years. A blue-clothed youth sitting in a quiet corner smiled and said, "After this incident, this year's students will only respect His Majesty more." What do you think, Alin? The black-clothed man placed the deboned fish into Shan Yu's bowl. Didn't you say that he wanted to meet Jiang Huiqing? Aren't you going? There's no hurry. I've already communicated with him. He'll come and find us when he sees us. Xinyu stayed in the palace for a few days. After confirming that the matter of the Grand Commandant was irreversible and that he had really rewritten Jiang Huiqing's fate, he wanted to leave the palace to meet him. Coincidentally, Shang Junlin also had matters to attend to. The two of them changed into the same attire they had worn the last time they left the palace and went to the Yingxing Tower. This time, they didn't ask for a private room. Instead, they chose the main hall. Xinyu wanted to experience the liveliness of the Yingxing Tower after the examination. The busiest time should be the day when the results are released. Do you want to leave the palace on that day to take a look? Xinyu hurriedly nodded. Yes. If Yu performs well, I'll bring you out. Xinyu didn't understand what he meant by performing well. Suddenly, he realized something. Aren't we going to wait for the court examination to end? Brother Lin, Brother Yu. Jiang Huiqing saw the two people sitting by the window the moment he came downstairs. He pulled Yu over. I was quite surprised that Brother Yu said you wanted to come. What's there to be surprised about? We've known each other for a while. On such an important day, we naturally have to get together. Xinyu said. After a period of correspondence, Jiang Huiqing and Xinyu had become more familiar with each other. He sat across from the two of them. I was worried that Brother Lin and Brother Yu would be busy. Yu called over the waiter who was waiting by the side and added some dishes. Thank you for your help with the matter of Huiqing. Xinyu smiled and replied, There's no need to be so polite between friends. The two of them sat down and talked about the recent events. Jiang Huiqing sighed. This time, it's all thanks to Her Majesty. Otherwise, it's hard to say if I would have been able to take the examination normally. Huiqing is very knowledgeable. It's a loss that you can't serve the court. You flatter me. It was the first time Jiang Huiqing had been praised like this. He lowered his head in embarrassment. Let's not talk about this. To thank you for your help during this period of time, let me toast you too. After saying this, Jiang Huiqing picked up the wine cup and drank it in one gulp. Xinyu was ordered to abstain from drinking. Shang Junlin returned a cup. You can't drink. I'll drink on his behalf. I didn't think it through. I'm sorry. Jiang Huiqing said apologetically. It's okay. In fact, I also want to drink, but Lin is watching over me. The more he didn't let him drink, the more Xinyu's heart itched. Shang Junlin was still very quiet throughout the meal. It seemed that all his attention was on how to take care of Xinyu. Jiang Huiqing watched him pick food for Xinyu, pick out fish bones, and occasionally whisper a few words to him. He deeply felt that he shouldn't be here. After the meal, they chatted for a while. Shang Junlin still had something to do, so Xinyu proposed to leave. Is you going back to the palace, or coming with me? Shang Junlin asked while playing with Xinyu's fingers in the carriage. Xinyu asked, Where is your majesty going? Shang Junlin answered, The Supreme Court. Xinyu asked, Is it because of the military officer? Shang Junlin answered, Yes. Xinyu said, I'll go with your majesty. I don't want to go back to the palace alone. Shang Junlin ordered, and the carriage turned to the Supreme Court. The minister of the Supreme Court had received the news early and personally led the carriage into the inner courtyard. Shang Junlin got off the carriage. The minister of the Supreme Court was about to go forward when he saw a man in black standing beside the carriage and stretching out a hand. The minister of the Supreme Court was stunned. Who else was inside? At the same time, he couldn't help but be curious. What kind of identity could make His Majesty personally welcome him down the carriage? Soon, the answer was revealed. A white hand stretched out from the carriage curtain and put on the hand of the man in black. The curtain opened and a young man in blue stepped out. Shang Junlin held Xinyu's hand. If Xinyu hadn't stopped him with his eyes, he would have directly carried her down. Seeing the intimate action of the two, the minister of the Supreme Court was shocked and hurriedly knelt down to salute. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. No need to be so polite. Shang Junlin raised his hand and motioned for him to stand up. Just take us there. Yes. The minister of the Supreme Court didn't dare to ask more and led the way in front with trembling hands. Standing in front of a dark red door, the minister of the Supreme Court bowed his head. Your Majesty, the files are inside. No need to let anyone follow. Yes, The minister of the Supreme Court hesitated for a moment and said, "Your Majesty, don't worry, I won't go in." Shang Junlin narrowed his eyes unhappily. Xin Yu poked his arm. "I don't want to see those scholarly things. I'll just wait for your Majesty outside. It just so happens that I haven't been here before." Xin Yu turned his head and looked at the minister of the Supreme Court. "Can I stroll around here?" The minister of the Supreme Court was grateful for Shan Yu's help and hurriedly replied, "Of course you can." Shang Junlin still wanted to say something, but Xin Yu interrupted him. "Your Majesty, please spare me. I can read the books, but not these." Seeing that he really didn't want to go in, Shang Junlin dispelled the idea and pinched his face. "Be good and wait for me outside. Don't run around." After Shang Junlin went in, Shen Yu strolled around the courtyard. The minister of the Supreme Court didn't dare to go too far or too close and followed him from a distance. The sun was setting in the west. Shen Yu finished looking at all the flowers and plants in the courtyard, and Shang Junlin came out. On the way back, Shen Yu couldn't help but be curious and asked, "Your Majesty, what do you want to see? You can just send someone to get the files. Why do you have to go there yourself?" "There are some things that are uncertain. It's troublesome to let them do it. Since you are going out of the palace, I might as well go there myself," Shang Junlin explained. After returning to the palace, Mu Shi reported the results of the investigation to Shen Yu. There are no less than 20 palace maids who are victims. They are all not very eye-catching in the palace. Moreover, thinking of the truth, Mu Shi was so angry that her eyes turned red. And there are 2 who are under 15 years old. What about those palace maids? With a coched sound, Shen Yu broke the plum blossom branch in his hand. This servant found an empty courtyard in Yuzhong Palace to settle them down. Shen Yu turned around. "Take me to see them." Passing through the flower path, Mu Shi took Shen Yu to a remote courtyard. Mu Shi pushed the door and went in. When they saw Shen Yu, the palace maids in the room couldn't help but tremble. "This is Gue Jun, the person who will uphold justice for you. Don't be afraid." Mu Shi was obviously very familiar with their situation and comforted them in a soft voice. Several palace maids bowed in fear, and their movements were slightly sluggish. "No need to be so polite." Shen Yu didn't let them bow. "Since the people in my palace hurt you, I will definitely seek justice for you." "Thank you, Gue Jun." Hearing Shan Yu's promise, the eyes of several wooden palace maids finally brightened. "If you have anything to say, just tell Mu Shi." Shen Yu said a few words and left with Mu Shi. On the way, Shen Yu asked, "Did you find an imperial physician for them?" Mu Shi shook her head. "This servant knows that the situation is not very good, but they refused to let this servant find an imperial physician." Shen Yu noted down this matter. Later, he mentioned it to Shang Junlin. "Your Majesty, is there a female physician in the palace?" "Shang Junlin, there should be. I will let Meng Chang arrange it." "Why do you need a female physician?" "Shen Yu, I have some injured women in the palace. It is more convenient to let a female physician take a look at them." "Shang Junlin, is it those palace maids?" "Yes." Shen Yu lowered his voice. "I want to see them today. It was my negligence. I will think of a way to make up for it later." "How can this matter be blamed on you?" Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's hand on his knee. "You have done very well. In the palace, people's lives are as light as grass. How many people can be like you, willing to stand up for palace maids who they don't know? Strong, gentle, dangerous. He loved every aspect of her to the bone." Chapter 62. I just happened to run into him, and the one who hurt him is someone from my palace. Shen Yu lowered his eyes and hid the coldness in his eyes. "It's better to deal with this kind of scum. We'll do as Yu says." Shang Junlin stroked the hair on the young man's forehead. "Since I said you can deal with this matter by yourself, I won't interfere." "Your Majesty, how's the matter with Grand Commandant going?" Shen Yu had already made a decision and changed the topic. "He can't stand the interrogation. Grand Commandant has confessed that it was King Yu who ordered him to do it." Shen Yu raised his head and looked at Shang Junlin. He smiled and said, "King Yu must have never thought that a prison would bring him such a big surprise. In a few days, someone will inadvertently reveal the news to him. At that time, he will only be more anxious to get out. After all, He was in prison and could only be at the mercy of others. King Yu waited anxiously for a few days, but didn't receive the order from Shang Junlin to let him out. Instead, when a jailer leaked the news, he heard that he had ordered Grand Commandant to create a fraud case. What did you say? King Yu clenched his hands and widened his eyes in disbelief. Knowing that he had leaked the news, the jailer's face turned pale. His superiors had specially ordered him not to let King Yu know any news from the outside world. Why would anyone believe such a ridiculous rumor? I ordered Grand Commandant? How can I order him? King Yu thought it was ridiculous at first, but when he thought deeper, his face became more and more ugly. It was true that he had many small tricks, but this was the only thing he didn't do. How could he let Shang Junlin have such a big handle on him before his big plan was completed? He did it on purpose. King Yu's fingertips turned white. He deliberately put the blame on me so that he can ignore Father's will and attack me unscrupulously. I want to see His Majesty. I didn't do it. I won't admit it. King Yu made a scene in the prison. The jailer had no choice but to report the news. King Yu must have made up his mind to go on a hunger strike and self-harm. Shang Junlin put down the secret report with a cold look in his eyes. Shen Yu walked over, picked it up, and glanced at it. It's not strange. He knows that His Majesty will not let him die in prison without a clear reason. If he fights with his life on the line, he might be able to fight for a way out. If he sits and waits for death, he will be finished. Rumors spread like wildfire. King Yu's people couldn't contact King Yu and were running around in circles anxiously. What should we do now? Is Your Highness really the mastermind behind this? His confidants looked at each other and shook their heads. If His Highness did it, he wouldn't have hidden it from all of us. There's only one conclusion to this matter. His Highness was framed. His Highness has always had a good reputation. He is also gentle and courteous. No one can find fault with him. Who would have such a huge grudge against His Highness and want to push him to his death? There was a moment of silence in the room. After a long time, someone said in a deep voice, "Have you forgotten why King Yu was locked up? Are you talking about the families of those women?" The rest of the people thought about it and felt that it made sense. Aristocratic families cared a lot about their reputation. What King Yu did was like a slap to the face of these aristocratic families. No, there's still an extremely suspicious point in this matter. Why would all those women appear at Star Welcome Pavilion that day? Only a small number of people know about this. Could it be that the Count of Northern Marquis leaked the news? Anyway, this matter needs to be investigated. Shang Junlin's people were paying close attention to the movements of King Yu's people. When the news was reported, Shen Yu also knew about it. Will they trace it back to the hidden dragon guards? Shen Yu held a white chess piece and placed it down. He didn't allow his people to do it because he was afraid that they wouldn't be able to clean up the mess properly. It was a quiet afternoon. Shen Yu had enough of his afternoon nap. He pulled Shang Junlin to play chess with him. Shang Junlin placed a black chess piece down casually. If they find out, the name of the person who did this will be removed from the hidden dragon guards. On the chessboard, they played back and forth. Under the seemingly peaceful surface, each move was filled with killing intent. Outside the chessboard, the two of them placed their chess pieces casually. Since they want to investigate, they should give us a target. If they can't find anything, they will suspect us sooner or later. In short, they had to find a scapegoat. Since they suspect that it's the Count of Northern Marquis, let's confirm their suspicions. Shen Yu made a decision casually. Just as Shen Yu thought, King Yu's people were just confused at the start. When they realized what was going on, they realized that there was something wrong with the whole situation. The strategists that King Yu had spent a lot of effort to train were not idiots. They didn't have any real skills, and King Yu didn't think highly of them. Following the clues left behind by the hidden dragon guards, they found out that it was the Count of Northern Marquis. Sure enough, there is a problem with the son of Count Northern Marquis. After all, he is just a son of a concubine. If it was Shen Yu at the start, His Highness would have coaxed him. However, what is Shen Qingran? Why does His Highness think so highly of him? King Yu didn't tell these people about the contents of Shen Qingran's letter. Hence, they didn't know that Shen Qingran had almost become their colleague. Xin Qingran didn't have a good time during this period of time. After creating such a big commotion, Count Northern Marquis was deeply embarrassed. After all, other people were daughters. Why did Xin Qingran, as a man, have to rush? Hence, Xin Qingran was grounded again. In the future, without my permission, don't come out and embarrass yourself. Ignoring Xian Qingran's explanation, Count Northern Marquis left in a huff. He was really blind to think that this son of his could be of great use. He didn't care about the son of his first wife. The more Count Northern Marquis thought about it, the more he regretted it. With Shun Yu's degree of favor, if he had treated him well, the Count of Northern Marquis wouldn't have to worry about the future. Unlike Xin Qingran, this unfilial son, he would only embarrass him. After investigating the Count of Northern Marquis, how could King Yu's men let it go? They started to target the Count of Northern Marquis. Some of their power had been uprooted, and they had been entrenched in the capital for many years. The remaining power was more than enough to deal with the declining Count of Northern Marquis. Xin Qingran threw a tantrum. He also felt wronged. He thought that he was the only son of King Yu, and that he had finally found the right person. Who knew that he was just a fish in King Yu's fish pond? He was nothing. Concubine Ru tried her best to persuade him to calm down. Shun Yu is also lucky. If I had known that His Majesty would treat the person sleeping beside him so well, I wouldn't have pushed the opportunity to him. My poor son, it should have been you who entered the palace. Hearing Concubine Ru's words, Shun Qingran felt even more upset. If it was him who entered the palace, now Shun Yu, no, the whole Count of Northern Marquis, would they have to live under his whims? Mushi told Xin Yu about what happened in the Count of Northern Marquis. After that, she said angrily, Xin Qingran didn't think about it. Even if it was him who entered the palace, would His Majesty like him? Now it is me who entered the palace. No matter how regretful he is, he can't change this fact. Shun Yu slowly trimmed the branches and leaves for Mo lawn. People in the Count of Northern Marquis are all picky. They should have tasted the pain that young master had suffered. Don't worry. It's just the beginning. Xin Yu took the handkerchief from Mushi and wiped his hands. Those halos that shouldn't belong to Xin Qingran, he would not let him have any of them in this life. The palace servants came forward and moved the flowers to their original place. Xin Yu put down the handkerchief and asked, "How are the palace maids?" "They have begun to get better. The female doctor sent by His Majesty is very responsible. After a while, they will be able to recover as before." Mushi smiled faintly and said, "Their mental state has also improved a lot. They are very grateful to young master for what he has done for them." "What about Uniquely?" Mushi's face turned cold. He pretends that nothing has happened. These women are missing, but he doesn't care. Meng Yuan's appointment has been issued. It's time to deal with Uniquely. Shun Yu's eyes flashed coldly. How is Meng Yuan getting along with him? Young eunuch Meng is easy to get along with. The palace maids and eunuchs all trust him. Yes, Shun Yu didn't directly deal with Uniquely and appoint Meng Yuan. Instead, he chose another job for him to learn about Yuzhong Palace. After eunuch Meng learned of Shun Yu's actions, he wasn't dissatisfied. Instead, he went to knock on Meng Yuan's door. Don't take it lightly just because the job given to you by His Majesty is small. His Majesty intends to cultivate you. Your godfather. I put down my old face to get this job for you. If you don't do it well, don't blame me for being ruthless. I know. I can feel how His Majesty treats people. I won't let Godfather be humiliated. Meng Yuan's eyes were firm. I won't let His Majesty's cultivation down. It's good that you understand. Eunuch Meng nodded with satisfaction. The situation in the palace changes rapidly. There's a better place than His Majesty. Do you know why I want you to go to Yuzhong Palace? Eunuch Meng planned to make it clear in one go. Because His Majesty values His Majesty. Yuzhong Palace, under His Majesty's intention, is separated from the entire palace system. It's higher than any other place in the palace and won't be disturbed by any other place. Working in Yuzhong Palace may not have as much power as other places, but it's the safest place. After a deep discussion, Eunuch Meng patted Meng Yuan's shoulder. Li Ping, that person, can't even take a good opportunity. You have to learn from him. His Majesty can't tolerate sand in his eyes. You have to watch over Yuzhong Palace. Don't let some big-hearted people dirty His Majesty's eyes. The next day, Eunuch Ming served Shang Junlin tea. Suddenly, he heard Shang Junlin say, Jin doesn't want to hear anything that will annoy His Majesty in Yuzhong Palace, understand? This slave understands. This slave has already warned Ming Yuan. Similar things will never happen a second time. Eunuch Ming secretly sweated in his heart. Fortunately, Ming Yuan was taught by him. He knew the root of the problem. He also warned him from time to time. He wouldn't make a big mistake. This time, His Majesty tacitly allowed His Majesty to deal with it himself. If there was a next time, His Majesty would never let it go easily. Li Ping, as usual, is on duty during the rest time, planning to relax and relax. Recently, a new eunuch came to Yuzhong Palace. He was good-looking and popular. Li Ping didn't like him. He had to find a way to get rid of him. Li Ping was thinking about something and didn't notice the abnormal silence around him. Where are you going, eunuch Li? Li Ping was startled by Ming Yuan, who suddenly appeared at the corner. He said angrily, Where I go doesn't seem to be little eunuch Ming's turn to care, right? I really don't care. However, His Majesty asked me to take you to see him. Ming Yuan didn't talk nonsense with him. He waved his hand. 2 guards came out from behind him and grabbed Li Ping without saying a word. Xinyu leaned on Shang Junlin and pointed to the screen not far away. They should be here, Your Majesty. Shang Junlin got up and pinched Xunyu's face. Jin knows? I won't delay your business. Shang Junlin went to the side of the screen and sat down. He looked at Xunyu, who was sitting on the high seat. He had the illusion that his identity had changed. Chapter 63. During this time, Yuzhong Palace had been as usual. Li Ping didn't know that his matter had been exposed. When he was brought into the main hall, there was no trace of fear on his face. Gue Jun, the person has been brought. Ming Yuan respectfully saluted. Li Ping broke free from the 2 guards who were holding him down and knelt down to salute. Gue Jun, do you know why I called you here today? Shun Yu's tone didn't reveal any joy or anger. Forgive me, Gue Jun. This slave doesn't know. Li Ping kowtowed. This slave believes that he has never made any mistakes in Yuzhong Palace. I don't know why Gue Jun wants to capture this slave. Is that so? Shun Yu coldly looked at Li Ping, who had no repentance. Please explain, Gue Jun. Li Ping believed that he couldn't find any mistakes in his actions, so he didn't take Xun Yu's sudden outburst seriously. Shun Yu had never lost his temper in Yuzhong Palace, and he rarely intervened in the affairs of the palace. Most of the palace servants had a good impression of him. Mu Shi, who served him closely, understood his young master's character, but he wouldn't talk nonsense. Xun Yu didn't like people to serve him closely. Shang Junlin often came here, so the servants in the room were usually Eunuch Ming and Mu Shi. Although he was the head eunuch of Yuzhong Palace, Li Ping had little time to serve Xun Yu. He knew too little about Xin Yu, so he thought that Xun Yu was a person who was easy to fool. Ming Yuan, tell him why I caught him, and let all the palace servants in Yuzhong Palace watch. Xun Yu supported his chin with one hand, his eyes without the slightest emotion. Li Ping finally felt that something was wrong. Looking around, almost all the palace servants in Yuzhong Palace were here. If it was a small matter, there was no need to go through so much trouble. For some reason, Li Ping remembered that when Xun Yu first entered the palace, a major event happened in the palace. Blood flowed like a river, and everyone was scared out of their wits. The only difference was that the palace servants who were punished that day were a group of people. Today, he was the only one who was being judged. He looked up at the young man sitting on the high seat. His face was the same as usual, but at this moment, there was a murderous aura. In a trance, he felt that the person sitting on the high seat was not Shen Guijun, but His Majesty, who was decisive in killing. His heart sank bit by bit as panic rose from the bottom of his heart. Meng Yuan's voice remained unchanged as he read out Li Ping's crimes word by word. On the 8th day of the 12th month, palace maid Xiao Chui was secretly brought to. With the announcement of one crime after another, Li Ping's face became more and more defeated. When he did these things in private, he thought that he was doing it secretly. The people who did it were all palace maids without any foundation. He assumed that they would not dare to speak of it. Relying on his identity as the managing eunuch of Yuzhong Palace, he could be said to be unscrupulous. Not only that, in order to curry favor with him, some palace servants who knew his preferences would even send people over themselves. Li Ping did not refuse any of them. When he was in a good mood, he would promote a few people to work in Yuzhong Palace. Shen Yu lowered his eyes, restraining the killing intent in his eyes. Fortunately, he had discovered this early. Otherwise, what would become of Yuzhong Palace? Is Li Ping's backer to satisfy his selfish desires and oppress others with his power? For a moment, the hall was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. After Meng Yuan finished reading, Shen Yu stood up and looked at Li Ping condescendingly. Li Ping, do you know your mistake? Obviously, he was only wearing ordinary clothes, but his momentum was so oppressive that people did not dare to look directly at him. Li Ping prostrated himself on the ground and kept kowtowing. This slave knows his mistake. This slave was possessed. Everyone in Yuzhong Palace was summoned. Li Ping knew that he could not be kind. He was wrong. He was wrong. He thought that if Shen Yu did not ask, he would not care about the matters in the palace. He thought that Shen Yu was a soft-hearted person who was easy to fool. Also, if he could be so favored by His Majesty, how could he be a person with nothing but his face? If you are wrong, you should be punished. Drag him out and beat him to death. The two guards ignored Li Ping's crying and begging for mercy and dragged him out. Shen Yu looked down. Today, I want to make one thing clear. As a member of Yuzhong Palace, if you are bullied outside, Yuzhong Palace will be your backing. Similarly, if you are like Li Ping, relying on the fact that you are a member of Yuzhong Palace to commit crimes, the first to punish you will also be Yuzhong Palace. Today, I called you here to tell you that from today onwards, the managing eunuch of Yuzhong Palace will be Meng Yuan. Secondly, I want to warn you not to let what happened to Li Ping today become your tomorrow. Without giving the palace people a chance to react, Shen Yu took them to the place of execution. In the gradually rising smell of blood, he said coldly, I don't want today's matter to happen a second time. It was the first time that the people of Yuzhong Palace had seen Shen Yu so angry. It was also at this time that they realized that just because Shen Yu didn't manage things, it didn't mean that he really didn't know anything. Li Ping's matter was so secretive that even the people who worked with him didn't necessarily know, but Shen Yu could find out everything in one fell swoop. Screams and the sound of sticks hitting flesh mixed together, and the smell of blood lingered. Everyone unconsciously tightened their hearts at this moment. No one noticed that the small group of women who were watching the execution didn't look at the center with fear, but only pleasure. At this moment, a corner of the haze in their hearts was finally blown away by the wind. Given time, time would wash away the pain in their hearts. Although Mushi had seen a bloodier scene last time, she still felt a little weak in her hands and feet after watching the whole process. On the other hand, Shen Yu didn't even blink. After it was over, the palace people dispersed. As soon as Shen Yu entered the room, he was hugged tightly. You. The man buried his head in Shen Yu's shoulder and neck. His hot breath sprayed on Shen Yu's sensitive skin, which gradually turned red. His waist was firmly shackled by the man. Shen Yu couldn't break free and could only be nibbled and pecked by the man. The nibbling spread up from his neck. After a long time, Shen Yu was finally let go. Shen Yu lay in the man's arms and calmed his breathing for a while. Then, he said, Your Majesty, what's wrong? It's the first time I've seen you like this. I'm a little excited. Shang Junlin hugged Shen Yu. His eyes were full of black fog. Your Majesty is more than just a little excited. Shen Yu felt a certain energetic existence. He said helplessly, Your Majesty, let me go. I won't let go. Shang Junlin's arms tightened, letting Shen Yu closer to him. Just now, when he sat behind the screen and saw Shen Yu's cold and stern appearance, his heart was burning. He just wanted to hold him in his arms and shut him in the room, not letting anyone see him. He had already felt the strangeness in his body, but he didn't want to care. As soon as Shen Yu stepped through the door, he couldn't help but follow his heart and hold him in his arms. Shen Yu was afraid that he would agitate Shang Junlin even more. He didn't dare to move and quietly let him hold him for a while. Yu is so impressive. After a while, Shang Junlin took the initiative to let go of Shen Yu. Does your majesty like it? Shen Yu raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Because of what happened just now, the corners of Shen Yu's eyes were slightly red and there was some moisture in his eyes. Shang Junlin looked more and more happy. No matter how you are, I like you very much. Shen Yu didn't doubt Shang Junlin's words. After all, he had personally experienced it. Recently, the King of Yu's people have been targeting Count North. Shang Junlin took Shen Yu to the couch and sat down. Because of Shun Qingran? Shen Yu thought for a while and remembered that he let Shang Junlin divert the trouble last time. Your Majesty acts really fast. Count North is also angry because of the King of Yu's matter. When the King of Yu's people take action at this time, they will hit the wooden warehouse. Count North was a hereditary noble. The importance of face was not less than that of those aristocratic families. When Shun Qingran lost face, he could still discipline him behind closed doors. However, the King of Yu had invited Shun Qingran to meet him. Wasn't he humiliating them openly? Count North thought that the Count North was not worse than any aristocratic family. Now, there was a king who was favored by the emperor. Although Shun Qingran was a concubine's son, he was not someone who could be bullied. He had not yet found the King of Yu's trouble, but the King of Yu's people came to his door first. How could Count North swallow this anger? Both sides have scruples. They don't take any big actions. It's just a small fight. Shang Junlin said some of the secret actions of both sides. The news has been spread. How can the people behind the King of Yu sit still? Shen Yu leaned back. They are really calm. If they are not careful, they will not be unable to find any clues after so many years. Shang Junlin was not surprised by this result. Forget it. Take it slow. We have plenty of time to waste with them. The progress of the matter of the Grand Commandant was slowed down because it involved the prince. The day of the release of the results was getting closer and closer. Zhang Huiqing still kept in touch with Shen Yu. Recently, he sent letters one after another. Most of the topics were about the release of the results. The time of waiting for the results was always anxious. Even if Cheng Yu was calm, he was quite restless these days. The two people who could not stay calm sat together and talked. I don't know where Brother Lin and Brother Yu are working. We still don't know their identities. Zhang Huiqing scratched his face. If you don't know, then why are you writing letters to them every day? Cheng Yu looked at him indifferently. Zhang Huiqing, no one said anything about it. Young Master Yu and I hit it off at first sight. Other than you, young Master Yu is the only one in the entire capital that I am familiar with. Cheng Yu, have you never guessed their identities? Zhang Huiqing, I guessed, but later I found out that they were not. Forget it. I didn't get to know them because of their identities. If we are fated to meet, I will naturally know. Young Master Yu didn't say anything because it was inconvenient. He and young Master Lin got married because of their family. I don't know if he is living well in the Lin family. Fortunately, young Master Lin is a good person and treats him wholeheartedly. Cheng Yu almost spat out the tea in his mouth. Why are you worrying about other people's family matters? He really didn't know what Zhang Huiqing would think when he found out the true identities of those two people. If everything went well, he would be able to verify his guess after the court examination. Shang Junlin was the first to know when the results of the examination came out. You? Do you want to know the results in advance? Shang Junlin changed into his court attire and walked over. It's already out? To be honest, Shen Yu really wanted to know. During this period of time, Zhang Huiqing had been constantly writing to him about this matter, causing him to feel nervous. Shang Junlin was very familiar with Shen Yu, so he immediately saw the faint nervousness on his face. He laughed and said, "Why are you so nervous when you didn't participate?" Shen Yu shook his head slightly. He couldn't tell if he was nervous because of the results or because of something else. This was the first time Shang Junlin saw such an expression on Shen Yu's face. His heart itched, so he moved closer and placed Shen Yu on the short table. You lost." The stone in Shen Yu's heart suddenly fell to the ground. He raised his eyes to look at the man above him. He was surrounded by the man's strong arms and surrounded by a biting cold aura. There was no escape. You, it's time for you to fulfill your promise. Shang Junlin's eyes were bottomless, as if there was a fire burning in them that could burn everything. Chapter 65. Shin Yu looked at Shang Junlin speechlessly. You? Why are you looking at me like that? Shang Junlin's hands moved unhurriedly. Did I say something wrong? No. Shin Yu had a headache when he thought of the two experiences. He didn't dislike being intimate with Shang Junlin, but Shang Junlin had been with him for too long. Shin Yu felt that he couldn't take it anymore. Forget it. The carriage swayed as it entered the palace. Eunuch Ming, who had been waiting for a long time, greeted him as soon as he got off the carriage. Your Majesty, official Fong requests an audience. Let him wait for me in the imperial study. Shang Junlin left after sending Shen Yu back to Yuzhong Palace. Official Fong had come to the palace this time for his troublesome daughter. Your Majesty, I am ashamed. I didn't know that my daughter had disguised herself as a man to participate in the imperial examinations. Official Fong knelt on the ground, his face full of regret. He knew that his daughter had great ambitions, but he didn't expect that she would really put them into action. If he had known, he wouldn't have taught her so many things since she was young and made her ambitious. Shang Junlin had an impression of this woman. He threw the booklet in his hand aside and said, Tell me, what happened? My daughter kept the news a secret until the results came out. She knew that she couldn't hide it anymore, so she told me. Official Fong was shocked by his daughter. He didn't have time to be surprised that his daughter had obtained excellent grades in high school. He asked her to tell him the story in detail. It turns out that before the new year, when she went to visit her childhood teacher, she somehow got a man's identity and participated in the local provincial examination. After she passed, she didn't tell anyone and kept it a secret. This time, she used the same trick and entered the examination hall with that fake identity again. The final court examination was to enter the palace to meet the emperor. Fang Jia had told Shang Junlin in advance, so she was confident. That was why she dared to tell official Fong the truth after the results were released. Official Fong rambled on for a long time. When he finished, he kowtowed heavily and said, It's my fault for not teaching my daughter well. I am willing to accept the punishment. Is there a rule in Dahuan that states that women can't participate in the imperial examinations? Shang Junlin suddenly asked. No. Lord Fong didn't understand why Shang Junlin would suddenly ask such a question. He thought carefully about the laws of the Great Huan dynasty and realized that there wasn't any rule that prohibited women from participating in the imperial examinations. It was just that after so many years, everyone had subconsciously thought that only men could participate. Realizing the meaning behind Shang Junlin's words, Lord Fong's eyes slowly widened. But there has never been such a precedent. His Majesty actually wants to use female officials? Master Fong couldn't believe his eyes. There's no need to rush. Let's wait for the results of the court examination. Lord Fong returned home in a daze. Lady Fong anxiously greeted him. How is it? She was also shocked by what her daughter had done. Ever since Lord Fong entered the palace, he had been feeling uneasy. One had to know that deceiving the monarch was a crime punishable by the extermination of 9 generations of the clan. Not to mention that Fang Jia had participated in the imperial examinations as a woman. It would have been fine if she had not passed the examinations, but she had passed the examinations and even achieved good results. Master Fong patted Madame Fong's hand. Let's talk inside. In the study, Lord Fong dismissed the servants, leaving only his wife and Fang Jia. He slowly said, His Majesty doesn't intend to pursue Jia's matter. Madame Fong stood up from her seat in shock. How is that possible? Why not? Compared to the anxious Lord Fong and Madame Fong, Fang Jia was in a much better mood. I told you that His Majesty is different from other emperors. I told you not to worry. How can we not worry about this? Lord Fong was furious at the mention of her name. Look at what you've done. Our family was almost ruined because of you. Father, am I such a careless person in your eyes? Fang Jia sighed. Since His Majesty and Lord Fong had revealed the truth, there was no need for her to hide it. She told them everything that had happened after the incident with Prince Yu. I told you not to worry. You didn't believe me no matter what I said. Lord Fong let out a long breath. You mean, you told His Majesty about this in advance? Lord Fong's voice unconsciously rose as he spoke. Fong Jia nodded. I saw His Majesty and His Majesty at that time. Just as you said, they were a perfect match. Who asked you this? Lord Fong almost choked. Why didn't you discuss it with me before you made a decision? If His Majesty had listened to you and thought you were being whimsical, what would you have done? There are no ifs. Fong Jia retorted. There would only be one result. Otherwise, she wouldn't have had the chance to see His Majesty and His Majesty. Forget it. You've had your own ideas since you were young. Since you've made a choice, do it well. Don't let His Majesty down. Lord Fong waved his hand. What else could he say? Father, please don't worry. I won't go against my original intention. Madame Fong wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. Why did you choose such a path? Just thinking about it made Madame Fong's heart ache. How much doubt would a woman receive from the outside world if she became an official? Her daughter grew up pampered and spoiled. Before she could choose a husband for her and watch her get married and have children, she had to watch her daughter run headlong into the power field. Fong Jia came over and hugged her mother. Mother, don't worry about me. With His Majesty and His Majesty as my backing, I'll be fine. Just comfort me. You're just like your father. You always make people worry. At that time, Lord Fong was just a 7th-rank official who had just entered the officialdom. The other princes were powerful and influential. He chose Shang Junlin, who was the least favored, because Shang Junlin drove away the foreign enemies and recovered the country. At that time, Fong Jun knelt in front of me and only said one sentence. I'm loyal to De Huan, and also to the person who can save De Huan. Shang Junlin refuted the opinions in the memorial and talked about what happened at that time. At that time, I was in a very difficult situation in the imperial court. Several princes were fighting to the death. Almost all the forces in the capital were involved. I led the army outside all year round and didn't have any help in the imperial court. It was Fong Jun who gathered the forces little by little, so that I wasn't in the dark in the imperial court. His Majesty was willing to give Miss Fong a chance because of Lord Fong. Shen Yu poured a cup of tea and put it in front of Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin picked up the teacup and took a sip. There's one reason. There's another reason. Although she's a woman, I saw the shadow of Fong Jun in Fong Jia. He taught his daughter very well. I really want to see how far Fong Jia can go as a woman. Your Majesty won't misjudge people. At that time, Shen Yu saw the conviction in Fong Jia's eyes. In the short time they spent together, Shen Yu could also feel that Fong Jia was a determined person. She had the gentleness of a woman and a heart that didn't lose to any man. The more they spent time together, the more Shen Yu couldn't figure out how the Prince of Yu defeated Shang Junlin in his previous life. Whether it was in terms of intelligence or other aspects, the Prince of Yu was no match for the latter. What was the origin of the book he read after his death? Who was the one who manipulated them? The development of this life was very different from his previous life. Shen Yu didn't know if they were out of control, but he would never allow the ending of his previous life to happen again. In the book, the Prince of Yu was crowned emperor. Shen Qingran was the mother of the world. However, Shen Yu destroyed the Prince of Yu's dream before his death and changed the ending of the book. It was clear that everything in the book could be changed. After the general examination was the palace examination. The palace examination was held in the imperial palace and was personally supervised by the emperor. The students who failed the examination left the capital one after another. Those who were qualified to participate in the palace examination entered a new round of revision. The results of the cheating case were also announced during this time. The punishment of the Grand Commandant was not announced yet. The punishment of the other people involved was announced. Those who committed serious crimes were all executed. Those who didn't receive the death penalty were punished according to the severity of the case. The examinees who intended to cheat were all stripped of their qualifications to participate in the imperial examination. Including those from the same family, they were not allowed to become an official for 3 generations. This punishment was very serious. If 3 generations couldn't become an official, even the most powerful family would fall. This son Xingqiao is from my hometown. I didn't expect him to do such a thing in private despite his sanctimonious appearance. I've interacted with him before. And Sun Jianmu. I know a few of the people on the list. Damn, why did they have to do this? They've harmed themselves and their families. They deserved it. They wanted to take a shortcut, but they didn't know if they had the life to enjoy it. To be honest, I received a similar letter at that time. It was very exaggerated, but I didn't believe it. I received it too. Me too. They looked at each other and found that they were not the only ones who were targeted. The case was over, and the results of the general examination were out. They didn't have to be as cautious as before. After asking each other, they found that many of them were targeted. The only thing they had in common was that they were all from poor families. It was not a secret that the emperor liked to use officials from poor families. Those who could participate in the spring imperial examination more or less had some understanding of the situation in the imperial court. Once the results were out, the ultimate goal of the cheating case was clear. Fortunately, I only believe in my own efforts. I'm not tempted. Me too. The people who gathered had a look of fear. After a moment of silence, Zhang Huiqing said, "This has taught us a lesson. In the future, if we are lucky enough to enter the imperial court as an official, we should focus on serving the great Huan dynasty. Don't think too much about other things." That's right. We study hard so that we can serve the country one day. Soon, some of us will be able to realize our dreams. In the future, we should restrain ourselves. His words were echoed by the crowd. The hidden dragon guards presented the conversation between the students to the emperor. During this period of time, the situation was special. Shang Junlin sent a team of hidden dragon guards to collect information from outside the imperial palace. If anything went wrong, they would be able to intervene. It's a blessing in disguise. It's a lesson for these students who haven't entered the imperial court yet. Shen Yu finished reading Zhang Huiqing's letter and said, Zhang Huiqing's letter was about the discussion between the students about the cheating case. He was there at the time and wrote a letter to Shen Yu. With Zhang Huiqing outside, Yu is more informed than me. Shang Junlin took the letter from Shen Yu's hand and put it aside after reading it. The secret letter from the hidden dragon guards was placed there. Zhang Huiqing's letter and the secret letter from the hidden dragon guards arrived at the same time. He seems to like writing to Yu. Before the exam results were out, he wrote to Yu a lot. These few days, he sent a few more letters. Did Yu reply to his letter? Of course, Yu replied. If not, Zhang Huiqing wouldn't send letters to the imperial palace one after another. It seems like he did. Shang Junlin rubbed the young man's soft neck. What did Yu say to him? Chapter 66. Shen Yu tilted her head. Your Majesty, just ask. Don't touch me. Shang Junlin pinched Shen Yu's neck and let go. He said honestly, I like to touch Yu. Does Yu like it? Shen Yu blushed. She looked down and didn't say anything. Shang Junlin was worried that he would scare her away if he teased her too much. So he changed the topic. Prince Yu has been clamoring to see me. Prince Yu? Shen Yu looked up. What does he want? He said that he is innocent. He hopes that I will find out the truth and clear his name. Shang Junlin's eyes darkened when he mentioned Prince Yu. What about the people behind Prince Yu? Nothing happened? Shen Yu remembered that Shang Junlin said that the late emperor left many good things for Prince Yu. It's strange. The He family didn't do anything after they came to the capital. It seems that they are just here to have fun. Shang Junlin ordered the hidden dragon guards to keep an eye on the situation in the capital. I thought they would do something. What about young Master He? Shen Yu pondered. It would be fine if young Master He did something, but if he didn't do anything, it would be unsettling. Everything is as usual. Ever since the prison break, Shang Junlin had become even stricter with the young Master He. If there was a chance in the past to secretly rescue him, there was no chance of that happening now. Don't worry. Shang Junlin walked to Shen Yu and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her neck. I will take care of it. The He family won't come to the capital for no reason. Since they are here, they will definitely do something. Shen Yu stopped thinking about it. Worrying wouldn't solve the problem. You said that Xing is right. In the He family's courtyard, Father, are we really not doing anything? Young master, he didn't look good. My brother is missing. We came to the capital, but didn't tell us what to do. Does Xing think that it is fun to walk us around? I'm also worried about your brother. Patriarch, he knew where his youngest son was. Wasn't he worried? That was the Star Dark prison. No matter who went there, they would lose a layer of skin. But what was the use of being anxious? Could it be that he could still break into the prison? I don't think so, eldest young master, he said coldly. If Xing was really worried, Father should have asked around for brother's whereabouts after coming to the capital. But what did Father do? He warned us to behave ourselves, not to reveal our identities, and not to do anything. I naturally have my reasons for doing this, Patriarch, he said helplessly. What reason could there be? What's more important than finding my brother? Eldest young master, he was dissatisfied. I don't think Father has any intention of looking for my younger brother. Father, you don't want a star. Give me some men, and I'll go look for a star myself. Shut up. Patriarch, he was so angry that he was trembling. What did my star say before we came? Be careful. The capital is not like home. If you are not careful, you will make a big mistake. Stay here. Without my orders, you are not allowed to step out of the courtyard. Eldest young master, he couldn't believe it. Father, you don't have to worry about your brother. I said that I can bring him back this time. Patriarch, he flung his sleeves and walked away. Eldest young master, he stood in the courtyard and slowly clenched his fists. Young master? The servant walked forward. Eldest young master and youngest young master were born from the same mother. They had a good relationship since they were young. If youngest young master went missing, eldest young master would be the most anxious. He finally had some clues but was told not to act rashly. How could he accept that? If Father doesn't want to look for him, I'll go. You, eldest young master, he pointed at the servant. Bring our men and secretly ask around. Remember, don't make too big of a commotion and don't let Father's men find out. Xing, the servant replied and left. Eldest young master, his actions were considered secretive. However, he couldn't hide from the hidden dragon guards. The moment he made a move, the news was sent to the palace. Eldest young master, he is very close to his younger brother. Xun Yu flipped through the letter. It seems that Patriarch, he didn't tell eldest young master about his younger son. Xing probably thinks that eldest young master is not reliable. Even if he hid it, he would cause trouble. Xing gave us a loophole. We might be able to find out something through eldest young master he. Xing Yu thought so too. I plan to meet King Yu. You? Do you want to come along? Shang Junlin asked. Xun Yu nodded. Xing Yu was quite interested to see King Yu in trouble. The beginning of spring had passed, and the weather was getting warmer. Xing Yu took off his thick winter coat and wore a blue casual outfit. He looked even more handsome. When he met King Yu again, he didn't look as elegant as he usually did. If King Yu was rated 7 points in the past, he would only be rated 4 points now. His hair was messy and his face was pale. His eyes were sunken, and he looked dispirited. King Yu stared blankly at the tall figure approaching with the jade-like young man. Xing Yu was more charming than when he first met him. Shang Junlin took good care of him. His complexion was ruddy and his face was chubbier. He wasn't as thin as before, and his temperament was more restrained. Seeing the two people getting closer and closer, King Yu didn't know why, but a strange feeling rose in his heart. It was as if something important had left him, and there was no possibility of it returning. He opened his mouth, but the words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat. He couldn't make a sound for a long time. How can you not salute your majesty? While he was in a daze, the jailer couldn't stand it and scolded him harshly. King Yu recovered from his trance and noticed Shang Junlin's arm around Shan Yu's waist. He stared at the arm as if he wanted to dig a hole in it. Noticing his gaze, Shang Junlin quietly tightened his arm and let Xun Yu get closer to him. Under the watchful eyes of the jailer, King Yu reluctantly saluted them. Greetings to your majesty, your majesty. King Yu knocked his forehead on the ground for a long time, but didn't hear Shang Junlin's voice. He raised his head slightly and looked up. Shang Junlin looked down at him with no emotion in his eyes. It was as if he wasn't looking at Xing, but at an inconspicuous ant at his feet. Xing was like this again. Xing was like this again. King Yu tensed his body and didn't allow himself to lose his composure. In the past, he was Imperial Father's favorite prince. Everyone tried to curry favor with him. Shang Junlin was only Xing's son who was disliked by Imperial Father. No one in the palace took him seriously. Even the powerful eunuchs and palace maids could step on him. However, it was Shang Junlin like Xing who sat on the position they all dreamed of and became the biggest winner. Xin Yu looked at King Yu who was kneeling on the ground. He saw his unwillingness, but so what? In this life, he was destined to carry his unwillingness to the end of his life. He would find that no matter how hard he tried, Shang Junlin was still a towering mountain in front of him. He couldn't cross it. Thinking of this, Xun Yu chuckled softly. His laughter broke the frozen atmosphere. Shang Junlin looked at King Yu for a while and said, "I heard that you threatened to see me with your life?" King Yu was embarrassed. Once upon a time, he was the one who was superior to Shang Junlin. Every dog has its day. Today, in front of Xun Yu, his position was reversed. He couldn't say. His star was angry purely because Shang Junlin was one rank lower, and his star was angry because this situation happened in front of Shen Yu. Even though so much time had passed, he still couldn't forget that first startled glimpse and the first throbbing of his heart. He really wanted to straighten his back and be a little more strong-willed, but now that he had a favor to ask of someone, he couldn't. "I want to ask your majesty to give me justice. What the military officer did really has nothing to do with me. I beg your majesty to judge clearly." He could only kneel in front of Shang Junlin and beg him to let him go this time. In front of Xin Yu, King Yu clenched his teeth tightly. His heart was burning. He must take back his position. The one who had the last laugh must be him. "I know." A cold voice came from the top of his head. King Yu looked up in disbelief. "Your majesty knows why you still." His voice gradually disappeared, and his face became more and more ugly. King Yu was not stupid. He thought carefully. Since Shang Junlin knew that he was wronged, why did he let the rumors spread and even spread to his ears? There was only one possibility. You did it on purpose. King Yu could no longer maintain his calm appearance. "Why did you do it? You know that I didn't do these things. Why did you put the blame on me? You didn't do this, but what about those women?" Xin Yu looked at him coldly. King Yu looked at Xin Yu in astonishment. "You did it?" Xin Yu avoided the question. "Your people went to cause trouble for the residents of Northern Marquis." Xing found the right person. In the eyes of the outside world, Xin Yu and the residents of Northern Marquis were inseparable. As the legitimate son of Northern Marquis, the relationship between the two was bound together. When Shen Yu entered the palace, many people laughed at Northern Marquis for sending his legitimate son into the palace. Now, many people felt that Northern Marquis was far-sighted. So what if he was the legitimate son? Who could be so lucky to be favored by His Majesty alone? "Why did you do this?" King Yu was so shocked that he moved forward a few steps. "Are you still angry with me?" "There is nothing between me and Shan Qingran. I only looked for him because..." "King Yu, be careful with your words." Without waiting for him to finish, Shang Junlin interrupted him coldly. Feeling the strength around his waist increasing, Shen Yu reached out and patted the big palm on his waist to comfort him. When he turned to look at King Yu, there was only coldness in his eyes. "King Yu, don't talk nonsense. We have nothing to do with each other. You don't need to tell me about your relationship with Shan Qingran. I don't care. Whoever you are with has nothing to do with me. Do you understand?" The young man's voice was as cold as ice. The biting cold air was like an ice blade cutting through the skin and spreading from the outside to the inside. For a moment, King Yu almost felt that his heart was frozen. Once again, he deeply realized that he had completely lost Xin Yu. No, he didn't get it from the beginning. How could he lose it? King Yu smiled bitterly. "You gave Xian Xing to those women? How do you know this? When you hid your identity to get close to me, you also used the same method to get close to others. Did you really think that I didn't know anything?" Xin Yu answered carelessly. King Yu collapsed. "So you knew from the beginning that I approached you with a purpose?" Xin Yu didn't answer. In King Yu's eyes, Xing Xing had acquiesced. I thought that we had feelings for each other. I was sad for a long time because of what happened in the past. King Yu murmured in a low voice. What happened in the past? Xin Yu suddenly remembered how Xing Xing, who was disgusted by his previous life, was disgusted. He was silent. Shang Junlin also thought of something. He looked sideways at Xin Yu and intimately stroked the hair on his temples. Speaking of which, in terms of seniority, King Yu should call a Yu imperial sister-in-law Kai Xing. King Yu felt as if he was struck by lightning. Chapter 67. King Yu looked at Shang Junlin and then looked at Shun Yu, who was half leaning in Shang Junlin's arms. The expression on his face could be described as brilliant. Shang Junlin was right. In terms of seniority, Shun Yu was indeed his royal sister-in-law. What was this? The person he liked for the first time was together with his elder brother who he didn't get along with? King Yu's mind was in a mess when he heard the words royal sister-in-law. Looking at the intimate posture of the two people, his heart was in a trance. Also, the title Yu used to be exclusive to him, but it was ruthlessly taken away when the young man turned around. Now, the only person who was qualified to call Xin Yu this way was Shang Junlin. Endless bitterness welled up in his heart. King Yu pulled the corner of his mouth, but his smile was uglier than crying. The coldness on Shan Yu's face was broken by Shang Junlin's words. Fortunately, he didn't laugh out loud. Especially when he saw King Yu's trance, his heart was even happier. This sentence was obviously a big blow to King Yu. Since Shang Junlin said this sentence, King Yu had been in a trance. After a long time, King Yu barely recovered. Shang Junlin was talking to Xin Yu in a low voice. Xin Yu had a faint smile on his face, which was completely different from his usual cold appearance. The more King Yu looked at him, the more uncomfortable he felt. However, he refused to look away and stared at the two of them as if he was torturing himself. Noticing his gaze, Shang Junlin casually glanced at him. The warning in his eyes made King Yu tremble with fear. He panicked and looked away. Some people only know the meaning of regret after losing something. Xin Yu didn't know what King Yu was thinking and didn't want to know. The fate between him and King Yu was cut off by him in his previous life. Not to mention that in this life, even if there was no Shang Junlin, Xin Yu wouldn't turn back to King Yu. He would only torture people to death. The more King Yu cared about something, the more he wouldn't let him get it. Lowering his eyes and restraining the coldness in his eyes, Xin Yu lowered his head and looked at Yuang. Yuang, have you ever thought about the consequences of your actions on those women? What? Prince Yu was stunned by Shun Yu's sudden question. His eyes widened as he asked, are you speaking up for those women? Ha ha ha, King Yu suddenly laughed. Speaking of harming these women, don't you think that your actions have caused more harm to them than mine? Xin Yu raised his eyebrows. You're the one who did something wrong. Why are you blaming it on me? Telling them the truth in advance is better than being kept in the dark by you for the rest of your life. At least I didn't let them lose face in public, and I didn't let them bring shame to their family. Xin Yu, oh Xin Yu, you've always been smart. Have you ever thought that when this matter is exposed, the one who will be hurt the most is not me, but those women? Xin Yu looked at him silently. Thinking that his thoughts had been seen through, the smile on King Yu's face widened. He looked at Chun Yu, the malice in his eyes undisguised. The outside world's rumors and the family's oppression will destroy these women, and the main culprit behind all of this is you. Xin Yu wasn't surprised by the sudden change in Yuang's attitude. In his previous life, he had seen every side of Yuang, so he knew this person very well. He said that he loved whoever he liked, but in fact, he only loved himself. Xin Yu didn't doubt that if Shen Qingran didn't have those useful strategies for Yuang in his previous life, the two of them would still be together. Seeing no change in Shen Yu's expression, Yuang's smile slowly disappeared. So, you know that your actions will harm those women, but you still do it for your own selfish desires, right? Xin Yu looked at Yuang from top to bottom, and the sarcasm in his eyes was undisguised. Your Highness, Yuang really surprises people all the time. Yuang subconsciously wanted to refute, but Shun Yu didn't give him a chance and continued. So Yuan can only be Yuan for a lifetime, and your majesty will always be Dahuan's majesty? Yuan was shocked and jumped up regardless of etiquette. Don't you know that you can't talk nonsense? Yuan was shocked when his most secret thoughts were revealed. He knew that Shang Junlin might have realized that he had bad intentions, but so what? There was no evidence, and Shang Junlin didn't dare to do anything to him because of the late emperor's will. Except for Shang Junlin and his closest confidants, no one else should know about this. When he deliberately approached Shenyu, he didn't tell him about this. How did Shenyu know about it? Shenyu suddenly smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. He intimately leaned on Shang Junlin and looked at Yuan with cold eyes. Your Majesty, do you think I'm talking nonsense? Yuan knows what you've done. Don't treat me as a fool. Shang Junlin responded to Shun Yu's words. Sure enough, he knew everything. Yuan staggered back. After a series of blows, the bad premonition in his heart became stronger and stronger. Yuan, you don't have to worry about those women. His Majesty has already predicted the results you said. Without you, those women will only live better and better. Instead of worrying about others, you should worry more about yourself. There are some things that not everyone has the right to covet. Shang Junlin, you did it on purpose, didn't you? You used those women to catch me, and now you're telling me these things. From the beginning, you didn't plan to let me go, right? Yuan was no longer submissive after he figured out the cause and effect. Unfortunately, with Royal Father's last words, just based on this, you can't touch me at all. Shang Junlin, so what if you're sitting in that position now? The person Royal Father likes has never been you. The late emperor's recognition is nothing. He couldn't even protect his own country. Shen Yu said, the recognition of the world is the recognition. His Majesty has the support of the people. Or, do you think you're better than His Majesty? When the jailer heard this, he was shocked. He carefully looked at Shang Junlin's face and secretly broke into a sweat for Shen Yu. The late emperor was the late emperor. Even if His Majesty and the late emperor were not close, he was still the emperor of a country and His Majesty's father. Shen Yu said that about the late emperor. When he saw Shang Junlin's face, he was surprised. Shang Junlin looked calm and didn't get angry because of Shen Yu's words. There was even a faint smile in his eyes. Before he could look further, Shang Junlin glanced at him. When he looked at others, he didn't look as gentle as when he looked at Shen Yu. Under his piercing gaze, the jailer quickly looked away and lowered his head. In his heart, he had a new understanding of how favored Shen Guijun was. Shen Yu listed one by one. How much territory have you recovered? How many enemies have you defeated? How many people have you saved? With each question, King Yu's face turned ugly. He didn't do any of these things. After listing, Shen Yu raised his eyebrows slightly. So, how do you think you are better than His Majesty? King Yu was speechless. Yu is really good at talking. On the carriage back to the palace, Shang Junlin poured a cup of tea and handed it to Shen Yu. Drink it to moisten your throat. Just now, he talked too much. Shen Yu was indeed thirsty. He picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp. I don't like him. He used to hide his identity and get close to me. His words belittled His Majesty. He doesn't even know if he is worthy. Shang Junlin was amused by Shen Yu's straightforward words. You really thinks that I am so good? Of course, His Majesty is the best. Shen Yu opened his mouth and said nice words. No one can compare to His Majesty. Shang Junlin was very happy. He took Shen Yu into his arms. Yu is also the best. Shen Yu was used to Shang Junlin's kisses and hugs from time to time. She found a comfortable position and lay down. After lying down for a while, Shen Yu remembered what happened just now. She poked Shang Junlin's arm. Why did His Majesty suddenly tell King Yu that I am his imperial sister-in-law? Ahem. Shang Junlin coughed twice. In a place where Shen Yu couldn't see, his earlobes turned red. He tried to answer in a normal tone. He and I have the same father but different mothers. He is younger than me. You are my wife. Naturally, he should call you imperial sister-in-law. Really? Shen Yu turned from Shang Junlin's arms to face him and looked straight into his eyes. Shang Junlin's eyes flashed slightly. Really? Oh, Shunyu deliberately dragged out her words. I thought His Majesty was jealous and wanted to declare your sovereignty to King Yu. It seems that I was thinking too much. After saying that, Shunyu was about to get down. Shang Junlin's arms tightened and restrained Shan Yu's movements. His lips moved, but his voice was so low that it was almost inaudible. Yu is right. Zhan is jealous. Ha ha ha. Shen Yu was overjoyed. She laughed and fell into Shang Junlin's arms. His Majesty, you are too cute. Shang Junlin corrected her again. Not cute. His hands were very gentle. He hugged Shen Yu and supported her from time to time to prevent her from falling. His Majesty was also very cute when he was serious. Shen Yu rested her forehead on Shang Junlin's shoulder. She gradually calmed down. The carriage swayed. Shen Yu knocked against Shang Junlin's body several times. Under such intimate contact, it was easy to have some reactions. Shen Yu had no choice but to sit up straight and move back a little. Why is the road suddenly so difficult to walk on? Shen Yu remembered that the road was not so bumpy when they left the palace last time. Meng Chong. Eunuch Meng heard the conversation inside and explained. I don't know who dug a lot of holes on the road. There are also some stones, so it is more difficult to walk on. Shen Yu curiously lifted the curtain. The road outside was indeed bumpy. Not many people usually use this road. Who dug it and damaged it? The road from the palace to the secret prison was not the main road. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin had not met anyone several times. Looking at the traces of damage on the road, it was obvious that it was caused by someone. At this moment, there was a quarrel in front of them. Shen Yu poked Shang Junlin's shoulder. Shang Junlin paused and ordered, Meng Chong, go and take a look. Yes. Eunuch Meng got off the carriage and came back soon. The two carriages in front collided. Eunuch Meng looked embarrassed. The road ahead is blocked. Your Majesty and Gue Jun may have to wait for a while. It's okay. Shen Yu turned to look at Shang Junlin. Your Majesty, shall we go and take a look? Yes. The two of them got off the carriage and followed Eunuch Meng to the place where the quarrel came from. The owners saw someone coming and looked over at the same time. One of them was Official Fong and his family. Official Fong subconsciously bowed when he saw Shang Junlin and Shen Yu. He hesitated for a moment when he saw that the two of them, including Eunuch Meng, were dressed casually. After a while, the owner of the other family walked in front of Shen Yu and Shang Junlin. I'm really sorry. There is a problem with my carriage. Please wait for a moment. I will try my best to compensate you later. How should I address you? The one who spoke was a man with a handsome face. He was gentle and polite. When he saw Shen Yu, his eyes lit up. Shang Junlin held Shen Yu. My surname is Lin. This is my wife. Chapter 68. This humble one was rude. The man bowed slightly and apologized. This humble one is Yin Zheng. I'm really sorry. Yin Zheng's appearance was handsome, and his pair of peach blossom eyes seemed to contain some indescribable feelings when he looked at others. He was dressed in an indigo long robe with wide sleeves, and his every movement was very elegant. Shen Yu looked at him for a while and felt the arm around his waist tighten, so he withdrew his gaze. Dahuan had always been open, so it wasn't strange for men to be together. Yin Zhang quickly adjusted his expression and looked in the direction that Shen Yu and Shang Junlin came from. Did the two of you drive past here? I just heard the sound of a carriage. Yes, our carriage is behind, Shen Yu said. We heard the noise here, so we came to see what happened. At this time, Fong Darren, who was dressed in casual clothes, also came over. He saw that Shen Yu didn't want to reveal their identity, so he tactfully didn't say anything. This humble one's carriage had some problems. It collided with another carriage. Yin Zheng smiled bitterly. I don't know why, but when I came here, the road was full of potholes. Shen Yu looked around and saw that the road was even worse than the one they came from. When we passed by here, it was still flat. How did it become like this in just over 2 hours? Shen Yu remembered that when he came here with Shang Junlin, the road wasn't so bad. He didn't know what happened in the past 2 hours to make the road like this. To be honest, this isn't the first time I've encountered this kind of thing. I'm afraid that the two of you were implicated by me. If I didn't take this road, I don't think this kind of thing would have happened. This wasn't the first time Yin Zheng encountered this kind of thing. He didn't know if it was purely because of his bad luck or because of someone's interference. While they were talking, the servants of the two families had already dealt with the carriage accident. Yin Zheng wanted to treat the two families to a meal to apologize. Shang Junlin wasn't busy today. Seeing that Shun Yu didn't object, he agreed. Coincidentally, Yin Zheng was treating them to Yingxing Tower. The waiter was very enthusiastic. When he saw the group of people, he quickly came up to them. Are you all together? What do you want? Shen Yu pointed at Yin Zheng. We are together. Today, he is the host. You can ask him. Yin Zheng was quite familiar with Yingxing Tower. He asked for a private room and ordered the restaurant's signature dishes. Then, he turned around and said to Shen Yu and the other two, I'll just order some random dishes first. If you guys want anything else, just order it directly. There were already a lot of dishes. Shen Yu and Lord Fong had no objections, but Shang Junlin, who had been quiet all this time, ordered a few more dishes. Hearing the names of the dishes, Shun Yu's eyes flashed. These were all his favorite dishes. Madame Fong and Miss Fong were female. Yin Zheng considerately asked for a private room for them, which was right next to theirs. As a woman with a title, Madame Fong had seen Shang Junlin before. She didn't breathe a sigh of relief until she reached the private room. Mother, why are you so nervous all the way here? Fong Jai poured a cup of tea for her mother. It's the first time I see that person in casual clothes. I'm still not used to it. Madame Fong took a sip of tea and slowly calmed down. Madame Fong thought that Fong Jai had met Her Majesty and Lord Guijun, so she didn't have any scruples in speaking. However, she didn't know that Fong Jai and Lord Guijun were disguised when they met. According to Lord Fong's attitude towards them, Fong Jai already had some guesses. Madame Fong's words confirmed her guess. What she saw today was the true appearance of Her Majesty and Lord Guijun. The rumors are true. That person really loves the children of the Shin family. Madame Fong was experienced. She could tell at a glance whether Her Majesty was sincere or not. Her Majesty's love for Lord Guijun and the affection in her eyes couldn't lie. Of course they are a match made in heaven. Fong Jai had already seen it. What surprised her the most was Her Majesty's attitude towards Lord Guijun. She didn't know how the two of them got along in the palace. When they were outside, Lord Guijun was in charge of many things. Madame Fong also agreed with this point. She smiled and said, in the past, I would never have thought that Her Majesty would be like this when she has a sweetheart. I don't know if you noticed, but they don't talk about seniority when they get along. She acts like an ordinary person who has fallen in love. Shin Yu didn't know that Fong Jai and her son were talking about him and Shang Junlin in the private room. Yin Zheng was very enthusiastic, and his way of dealing with people was very comfortable. Under his intention, Shang Junlin wasn't as taciturn as usual. The small banquet could be said to be enjoyable for both the guests and the host. After it was over, Shin Yu and Shang Junlin left first. Not long after, official Fong also got up and left. Yin Zheng stood by the window and watched the man gently and slowly carry the youth into the carriage. His eyes were full of emotions that others couldn't understand. If Gongzi likes Gongzi Yu, why not? Be careful with your words. Yin Zheng interrupted the servant. They are a married couple who are deeply in love. Why would I be a bad person and disturb them? It wasn't that Yin Zheng didn't feel that the man was good to Shin Yu. He admitted that he had some unspeakable thoughts when he invited him, but now these thoughts had been cut off. He quietly observed that throughout the meal, the man was intentionally or unintentionally taking care of the youth. It wasn't intentional, but a natural habit. This showed that the man had already engraved the principle of taking care of the youth into his bones. He had come to the capital for proper business. Romance was ultimately just a way to adjust his life. But, no buts, Yin Zheng knocked the servant's head with his fan. How's the thing I asked you to do? It's all done. Gongzi, are we really not going back in the future? What, is there someone you can't let go of there? Gongzi, don't make fun of people. I just feel that it's not worth it. Obviously, Gongzi is the one. Why? Yin Zheng sneered. If I want to do it, I'll do it. What's there to say about whether it's worth it or not? You're so young. Why do you have to worry so much? When have you ever seen your Gongzi suffer? Yin Zhang looked at the carriage in the distance. Judging from the temperament of the two people, he was afraid that their identities weren't that simple. Inside the carriage, Shunyu half leaned against the window. Your Majesty, who do you think dug up that road? Shang Junlin. That road has never been used by people. It's impossible for it to become like that for no reason. Moreover, we can only stay in the dark prison for 2 hours at most. If they want to do something, 2 hours is enough. Xinyu, this matter is directed at Yinzheng? Or is it directed at us? Shang Junlin, if it's directed at us, it doesn't make sense that it's just digging up the road. It's most likely directed at Yinzheng. Xinyu also thought so. Speaking of roads, Xinyu remembered something that Shan Qingran took out in his previous life, cement. The ratio of cement to cement was described in detail in the book he read after his death. Xinyu planned to write down the formula after returning to the palace and see if he could try to make it. Compared to the current roads, cement roads were indeed much more convenient. After returning to the palace, the first thing Xinyu did was to sit in front of the table and write down the things in his mind from memory. After his death in his previous life, he stayed in that empty space for a long time. The only thing he could use to pass the time was that book. Xinyu read that book several times, especially the knowledge that didn't belong to this world. He carefully memorized it. At that time, Xinyu didn't know that he could be reborn. He memorized these things out of interest. He was very curious about the world Shan Qingran lived in before he transmigrated. From the things vaguely shown in the book, it wasn't difficult to speculate what kind of wonderful world it was. After the formula was sorted out, Xinyu put it in a small box. How to give it to Shang Junlin became a big problem. Of course, before it was officially put into use, it had to be tested first. Xinyu memorized the formula again and listed out some precautions clearly. Then, he called Mushi over. Give this to the people in the village and let them make it according to what I wrote. Yes. Mushi didn't ask any more questions and put the box into his sleeve. How's the situation at Count North's residence? Sir Jinbei is still looking for trouble with the Prince of Yu's people. I don't know what Shan Qingran did to anger Sir Jinbei again. This time, even concubine Ru can't visit him. The cause was Prince Yu. Shan Qingran regarded Prince Yu as his last life-saving straw. Of course, he wouldn't easily break off the relationship with Prince Yu. He secretly revealed the matter of Count North's residence to Prince Yu's people, causing Count North to suffer a big loss. After knowing that it was Shan Qingran who did it, Count North was almost angered to death. I raised a good son for more than 10 years. Not only did he side with others, but he also told the enemy the weakness of Count North's residence. If I had known, I would have strangled him. Count North was so angry that his face turned red. Count North, please calm down. Qingran didn't do it on purpose. He is still young. I will teach him well. Concubine Ru grabbed Count North's hem and was kicked away. Still young? Count North was so angry that he laughed. Look at Xinyu. They are about the same age. How can Xinyu be so sensible and not bring trouble to the family? Look at your good son. What did he do? Not to mention the huge loss of benefits, the foundation of Count North was almost damaged. Count North valued Count North more than anything else. How could he tolerate this kind of thing? This Marquis really regretted not wanting a good legitimate son and spoiling an ingrate. Duke Jinbei coldly glanced at concubine Ru, passed down the order. In the future, without this Marquis permission, no one is allowed to see that unfilial son. If I find out that he is communicating with Prince Yu's people again, don't blame me for being cruel. After driving concubine Ru away, Count North summoned his confidant for a discussion. Count North, don't worry. With the eldest young master here, Count North's residence will be fine. Don't bother Xinyu if you can. It's hard for him to do things in the palace. Let's solve the problem caused by Shan Qingran first. This matter was neither big nor small. Count North could solve it by himself, but it would hurt him a lot. When it came to the matters of the imperial court, Xinyu heard about it from Shang Junlin. I'll let someone watch over him. I'm worried that he will beg you. If you want to interfere, Just tell me. There's no need to do it yourself. Shang Junlin played with a strand of Shan Yu's hair that fell to her chest and said in a low voice, Your Majesty, you don't have to care about him. Shun Yu lazily leaned in Shang Junlin's arms. He won't beg me. I'll listen to you. Shang Junlin picked up the strand of hair and kissed it. Your Majesty, do you really listen to me for everything? Shun Yu became energetic. She rolled on the man's body and turned to face him. As if he had expected what Shun Yu was going to say, Shang Junlin lifted his chin and kissed him on the lips, except for this matter. Chapter 69. Shin Yu shook his head and broke free from the man's grip. Your Majesty, do you know what I'm talking about? Every time. A Yu is unwilling. Shang Junlin lifted his eyelids and looked at him. You don't want to care about me after you're satisfied? I'm not. Shun Yu's face turned red. It's because your Majesty doesn't want to end it. If the imperial physician didn't say that a Yu needs more rest, a Yu would have fulfilled his duty. Shang Junlin's eyes lit up and he reached out to touch Shun Yu's neck. A Yu? Don't you think so? Your Majesty, you have to follow the physician's advice. Shun Yu had the imperial physician's words as a shield, so he was quite unscrupulous. You also have to restrain yourself. I'm already restraining myself. Shang Junlin's eyes were deep. Otherwise, do you think that I would let you go so easily? Because of Shun Yu's body, they didn't do it many times and didn't really get to the point. Occasionally, they would use their hands or legs. Shin Yu didn't want to continue talking about this dangerous topic, so he talked about another matter. Your Majesty, I made a new thing in the farmstead. I want to give it to your Majesty. What is it? Seeing that Shin Yu was changing the topic, Shang Junlin didn't expose him, but his hands didn't stop moving. Shun Yu's neck was very sensitive, especially around a small mole. Shang Junlin loved this place very much and liked to bite it when they were intimate. Your Majesty, let go of me first. Shun Yu felt a numbing sensation spreading from the side of her neck. Shang Junlin stopped moving his hands, but he didn't want to move away. The man's body temperature soaked into her body through her skin. Shin Yu couldn't do anything but sit up slightly. If your Majesty doesn't want to let me go, I'll go get it myself. It's in the compartment on the left. Shin Yu pointed to the compartment beside Shang Junlin. Following Shan Yu's guidance, Shang Junlin opened the lattice and took out a small wooden box without any decorative patterns. This? Yes, your Majesty. Open it and take a look. Shang Junlin opened the wooden box with one hand and saw what was inside. He had no choice but to let go of Shun Yu and unfolded the letter. In the beginning, Shang Junlin's attitude was a little careless. He always felt more relaxed when he was with Shun Yu. As time passed, Shang Junlin's expression gradually became serious. After reading it, Shang Junlin closed the letter and reached out to pull Shun Yu into his arms. His lips were close to Shan Yu's ear. Did you also learn this from the journal? There was an item called cement written on the paper. In addition to how to make it, there was also a detailed description of its use. Shang Junlin was a qualified ruler. He immediately thought of the importance of cement when he saw it. For the country and the people, this thing could play a great role. Your Majesty, it's fine if you think so. Shin Yu didn't want to hide the truth or tell the truth. He could only answer ambiguously. It's also called concrete. Shang Junlin gently bit Shan Yu's earlobe. A Yu really surprises me all the time. He saw that Shin Yu didn't want to say anything, so he didn't force him. Shin Yu was willing to give him this thing, which was enough to show how important he was to him. Otherwise, Shin Yu could have not taken it out in order not to arouse his suspicion. Last time, when Shin Yu gave him the flood control manual, after the official in charge of this area finished reading it, he told him that it was a very complete system. It couldn't be pieced together from various books. He directly asked him to find an expert, but Shang Junlin casually brushed him off. The people in my village have developed some products. Your Majesty, do you want to take a look? Seeing that Shang Junlin didn't intend to ask further, Shin Yu was relieved. I'm afraid it's not easy to move it into the palace. Just go directly to your village and take a look. Shang Junlin hugged Shin Yu tightly. I'm very happy that you gave me something. No matter what Shin Yu gave him, Shang Junlin's joy was the same. What he valued was Shin Yu's heart for giving him something, not the gift itself. After the two tidied up, they left the palace. The people in the village received the news that Shin Yu and Shang Junlin were coming and made preparations in advance, especially regarding the cement. The person in charge carefully watched every place and didn't allow any mistakes to be made. While everyone in the village was looking forward to it, the carriage carrying Shin Yu and Shang Junlin arrived late. The person in charge stood at the front, followed by the people who worked in the village. These people were Shin Yu's own people. They already knew about the relationship between Shin Yu and Shang Junlin from Mu Shi. Shin Yu told Mu Shi to let these people treat Shang Junlin as half of their own people. As usual, Shang Junlin got off the carriage first. After he got off, he reached out to help Shin Yu down. Shin Yu could get off the carriage by himself, but Shang Junlin didn't let him. At first, he wanted to carry Shin Yu down, but Shin Yu firmly refused. So, he took a step back and helped Shin Yu down. Shin Yu also didn't understand what Shang Junlin was thinking. How could the dignified emperor fall in love with helping people get off the carriage? However, Shang Junlin insisted, so Shin Yu could only let him do as he pleased. Today, the two of them were wearing clothes of similar colors. Standing together, it was very pleasing to the eye. The person in charge came up to them and said, "Your Majesty, Your Highness, everything is ready. Tea and snacks are also prepared. Take us directly to see the fruit." Shin Yu interrupted the person in charge's long-winded speech. The person in charge brought the two of them over and roughly explained the process. Soon, they arrived at the destination. The open space was divided into two parts. The left side was a flat cement floor, and the right side was the place where the cement was mixed. There were piles of various raw materials, and more than 10 men in short clothes were busy. "This is the road that Your Highness said was paved." Shin Yu walked closer with Shang Junlin. He had seen the finished product in his previous life, so he wasn't surprised. Instead, it was Shang Junlin who saw such a flat road for the first time. He couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. Shin Yu saw that there were gaps in the road at intervals. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "Well done." The person in charge brought the two of them to the other side and said, "This place is solidified. You can walk on it. Even if it rains, it won't affect the road." The person in charge had received Shin Yu's letter in advance, so he knew what to show. First, he let Shin Yu and Shang Junlin walk on it to feel it. Then, he ordered people to bring a bucket of water and pour it on the ground. Shang Junlin held Shin Yu's hand and walked slowly on the cement road. He could clearly feel that this road was different from the previous one. If a carriage were to drive on it, it would be much less bumpy. After walking one round, Shang Junlin held Shin Yu's hand tightly. The feeling of seeing it with his own eyes was completely different. The shock of the former was less than 1/10 of the latter. Although it was only a short section of the road, Shang Junlin could already imagine what it would be like when the official roads of the capital were paved with such roads. Not only the capital, but the entire Dahuan also needed to be paved with such roads. With a smooth road, communication would be faster. This would be of great help to Shang Junlin in managing the entire Dahuan. Shin Yu could feel Shang Junlin's excitement. He smiled and said, "Your Majesty, I don't have many people in my village. This is already the limit. I have already given the formula for the cement to Your Majesty. Your Majesty, you can order people to build a road to see the effect." To be treated like this by a Yu, I am really... Shang Junlin pressed his forehead against Shin Yu's and said in a low voice, "How should I thank you?" "Your Majesty, you don't have to thank me. I didn't think of this in the first place. To be useful to Your Majesty, it is Your Majesty's fate. Your Majesty, you don't have to think too much." Shin Yu didn't take out these things to take credit for himself. These things were useful to Dahuan and Shang Junlin. Under the guidance of the steward, the two went to see the process of making the cement. It wasn't difficult to make the cement. The raw materials weren't expensive either. It wouldn't be difficult to popularize it. After looking around, Shang Junlin made a decision. The two didn't stay in the village for long. After returning to the palace, Shang Junlin immediately summoned the Minister of Works and told him the method of making the cement. After reading it, the Minister of Works couldn't hide his excitement. This thing is really useful. What is it called? Cement, also known as concrete. It's mixed with solidified sand and stone. Other than paving roads, it should have many other uses. The Minister of Works' eyes lit up. Ever since Shang Junlin ascended the throne, their Ministry of Works hadn't had any great achievements. Now that they finally had a great opportunity, they had to seize it. I'll leave it to you. It's up to you to develop what you want. The road from the palace to the secret prison is broken. You can use it to practice. Yes, Your Majesty. The Minister of Works took the formula back and immediately arranged for people to start working. The current emperor valued people who could do practical things. It wasn't easy for the Ministry of Works to show off their skills. They couldn't let it go. The road that Shang Junlin circled out wasn't used by many people. For the sake of convenience, the Minister of Works ordered people to surround the road and tell the public that it was being repaired. That road was broken to begin with. It was normal that it needed to be repaired. The people who received the news didn't think much about it. It was just that people who occasionally wanted to use that road had to take a detour. Yin Zheng also heard the news. He turned and said to the servant, "It's because of our road that it's broken. We can't let the Ministry of Works repair it for us for free. Go and ask around. If they lack anything, send it to them." The servant, who knew his master's personality, acknowledged and went to do the task. He put the fan under his chin and curled his lips in a good mood. If he was lucky, he might be able to get the Ministry of Works to help him. If those people knew that they gave him such a good opportunity for free, he wondered if they would die from anger. The Ministry of Works was in full swing. The people of the Ministry of Works had a great change in attitude in the imperial court and attracted the attention of many officials. Those who were close to the Minister of Works went up to ask for the reason. They all received the same answer. They're repairing the road? It's just repairing the road. Do you need to be so excited? This person didn't understand. You don't understand. The Minister of Works' eyes were full of passion. You'll know when we're done. Our Ministry of Works is finally going to rise. This time, the person who asked the question really didn't understand. He shook his head and left. After giving the item away, Shun Yu didn't spend much time on it. In the previous life, the King of Yu relied on this to make huge profits and saved up some capital. This time, Shin Yu gave the item to Shang Junlin in advance. With the imperial court stepping in, they directly blocked the King of Yu's source of income and also cut off Shan Qingran's path to fame. Thinking of this, Shun Yu was in a good mood. What's you thinking about? Why are you so happy? Shang Junlin pinched Shan Yu's chin and turned Shan Yu's head to face him. I'm thinking that Da Huan will become better and better under Your Majesty's governance. If that's the case, I'll be able to follow Your Majesty and enjoy happiness. Shin Yu's smile didn't disappear. His dark eyes seemed to contain thousands of stars. Shang Junlin was mesmerized by those smiling eyes and couldn't help but move closer. I won't disappoint you. Chapter 70. The man's breath was getting closer and closer. Shin Yu didn't dodge and just stared at him. Shang Junlin chuckled and kissed Shan Yu's lips. The laughter disappeared as their lips met. The gentleness gradually became stronger. Shin Yu's breath was unstable, and he fell back. He was supported by a strong arm. His eyes were slightly closed, and his long eyelashes fluttered uneasily. He was like a butterfly that was about to fall in the wind and rain. After the kiss, the man's breath was still lingering on his lips. Shin Yu opened his eyes in a daze, and a magnified pair of eyes came into view. He looked straight into a pair of dark and deep eyes. The warm touch moved up his lips, cheeks, and eyelids. Every part of his body was carefully visited. The biting cold aura hovered and didn't dissipate for a long time. When he was finally released, Shun Yu's eyes were hazy with tears. Shang Junlin looked down at him for a while and said in a low and hoarse voice, "Shun will carry you to the bed." After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Shun Yu to react and directly picked him up while facing him. caught off guard. Shen Yu's feet were in the air. He tightly hugged the man's neck, and his thoughts were pulled away from the memories just now. Your Majesty, this time, Zhen will tell you in advance. Shang Junlin's voice carried a satisfied smile. Shen Yu reacted for a while, and then remembered that Shang Junlin was talking about what he had said before. It turned out that Shang Junlin had also firmly remembered this sentence. Shen Yu looked down. Because of his posture, he was taller than Shang Junlin. As he looked at the man from top to bottom, an indescribable feeling arose in his heart. It was soft and numb, sour and sweet. He didn't hate this feeling. He let it spread in his heart and slowly fill up his entire heart. Shang Junlin did not put him down. Instead, he carried him to the couch and placed him in his arms. Sometimes I wonder if a you was specially sent to me by the heavens. Shang Junlin buried his head in Shen Yu's neck, his voice almost inaudible. When the great Huan Sea clears, will a you be taken away by the heavens? What are you thinking, Your Majesty? After being pulled back to reality by Shang Junlin's words, Shen Yu found it funny. I'm a living person. If I'm not liked by my father, where else can I go except by His Majesty's side? Shang Junlin tightened his arms and said in a low voice, You can't leave me. No one can take you away from me. Shen Yu raised his hand and patted the man's head. I won't. I live very well by His Majesty's side. If I leave His Majesty, where else can I live as freely as I do now? After Shen Yu finished speaking, he thought about it. Adding up his 2 lifetimes, this period of time after entering the palace was the most comfortable period of his life. Shang Junlin considered everything for him. Other than him, there was no one else in the harem. The palace rules were like decorations in front of him. Unknowingly, he had already received so much preferential treatment. Thinking of this, Shen Yu's gaze gradually softened. Shang Junlin was Shang Junlin, the emperor of the Great Huan Sea. He wasn't the king of Yu or anyone else. A Yu promised me that if a Yu were to disappear one day, I would find a Yu no matter what. Shang Junlin left a trail of pecks on the side of Shen Yu's neck. In the past, he ascended the throne to protect himself. He developed the Great Huan Sea because it was his duty. He didn't want to be like the previous emperor, who caused the people to suffer because of his own selfish desires. What was the difference between him and the previous emperor that he had spurned? Now, he was very glad that he was the emperor of the Great Huan Sea. He had enough power to protect Shen Yu. In the future, he would work harder to develop the country. Only in this way could his Yu live more freely under his wings. After the excitement, the Minister of Works began to worry. Developing new things required a large amount of money. The Minister of Revenue was like a miser on this matter. The two of them argued a few times before the Minister of Works finally managed to get a sum of money. However, this could only solve the problem for a while. The Minister of Works sat in his seat with his brows tightly knitted. He was thinking of a way to get some money from the miser Minister of Revenue. Sir, are you still worried about the money? A subordinate walked in and asked when he saw the Minister of Works frowning. This kind of thing wasn't a secret in the Ministry of Works. Everyone knew that every time the minister wanted to do something new, there would be such a situation. Yes, it's enough for the early stages. What about the later stages? The Minister of Works frowned deeply. The subordinate's heart skipped a beat. He thought of the person he met 2 days ago and said tentatively, What a coincidence, sir. In the past 2 days, a man who claimed to be Yin Zhang came looking for me. He said that the road was damaged because of him. He felt very sorry and wanted to make up for it. That road was indeed damaged by someone, but what does that have to do with Yin Zhang? The Minister of Works wasn't easily persuaded. Sir, why don't you meet him first? I can see that Yin Zhang's eyes are clear. He doesn't seem to have any bad intentions. Of course, I'm not a good judge of character. Sir, you have to see for yourself, the subordinate advised. We're working for Dahuan. How can we let the commoners pay for it? The Minister of Works still didn't agree. Sir, to tell you the truth, it was that young master who took the initiative to look for me. His manservant has been walking around here all this time. That young master Yin said that he came from the south to do business. That road was damaged because of his past grievances, and he would feel bad if he didn't do something. You can leave first. We'll talk about this later. After thinking about it, the Ministry of Works minister still want to ask some people. Indeed, it was as his subordinate had said. There was a young master called Yin Zhang who had been walking around the Ministry of Works recently. There were quite a few people who knew about this matter. The Ministry of Works minister dispelled half of his doubts and decided to meet him first. If it was really just to make up for the damaged road, he wouldn't have to be so thick-skinned as to argue with the Minister of Revenue. Yin Zhang waited for a few days in the newly bought courtyard. As expected, the people from the Ministry of Works came. What happened that day didn't seem fake. After talking for a while, both sides had a certain understanding of each other. After thinking about it, the Minister of Works still went to the palace. You? Do you still remember the people we met outside the palace last time? After returning to Yuzhong Palace, Shang Junlin pulled Xinyu to sit on the swing. The weather was gradually getting warmer. When the temperature was high in the afternoon, Xinyu liked to bask in the sun outside. His favorite was the swing that Shang Junlin had made for him. He sat on the swing with a book in his hand. He didn't need the palace servants to push him from behind. The swing swayed gently. The sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves like naughty little elves jumping on the young man's body. With Shang Junlin around, Xinyu felt more relaxed sitting on the swing. Half of his body leaned on the man's body. He searched his memory and said, "Yin Zhang? It's him. He recently went to the Ministry of Works." Shang Junlin held Shun Yu's slender fingers and bit them gently. Why did he go to the Ministry of Works? Shun Yu didn't understand. He said it was to make up for the road that was damaged because of him. Shang Junlin's tone was a little careless when talking about this person. Xinyu, is the Ministry of Works short of money? Shang Junlin, as expected of you. You got the point immediately. Xinyu chuckled. If it wasn't for the lack of money, the Minister of Works wouldn't know about this person. You is right. Recently, the Minister of Works has been arguing with the Ministry of Revenue for money. Shang Junlin also had a headache when it came to this matter. The Ministry of Revenue is in charge of the National Treasury. The Minister of Revenue and the Minister of Works have always been on bad terms. Every time the Ministry of Works wants to do something, they will make a scene. If they want to develop something new, it will require a lot of money. Xinyu was very clear about this. I originally planned to give him a sum of money directly from my private treasury. Your Majesty, you can't. Before Shang Junlin could finish, Xinyu interrupted him. If there's a first, there will be a second. Your Majesty can't always use your private treasury to support the Ministry of Works. I think you can accept Yin Zhang's funding. Shang Junlin stopped playing with Shan Yu's fingers. What do you mean? If it's taken from the people, it's used for the people. When the time comes, this cement will definitely be used on the people. If Yin Zhang took the initiative to ask for compensation, it's better to change the compensation to sponsorship. When the cement is used in the future, we can announce to the public that this is sponsored by Yin Zhang's industry. The Ministry of Works will have the money for research, and Yin Zhang's reputation will also be known. It can be said to be mutually beneficial. Xinyu had seen this method from that book. In the world before Shan Qingran transmigrated, business was very developed. Many merchants used this method to make their products famous. When more people knew about it, there would naturally be many buyers. Sponsorship? That's a good idea. Dahuan doesn't restrict merchants. Through this method, we can also control the merchants in Dahuan. Ayu is really creative. Xinyu recalled what the book said and continued. The thing that merchants don't lack the least is money. However, merchants can't enter the imperial court as officials. If there's a special honor for them, I think they'll be very willing to exchange some money for it. Merchants value profits and reputation. Instead of letting a lot of money rot in their hands, it's better to give up a part of it in exchange for the imperial court's reputation. That way, it'll be much more convenient to do things outside. The more Shang Junlin thought about it, the more he felt that this method was good. He buried his face in Shan Yu's hair and gently sniffed. His Ayu was really a treasure. She surprised him every moment. As for the specifics, Your Majesty and the other ministers can discuss it. I just proposed a general idea. Whether it can be implemented or not depends on the situation in Dahuan. There's only one point. We can't let this method become a weapon for some people to fill their own pockets. Xin Yu lowered her eyes. In her previous life, the king of Yu had also implemented this method. However, because of some people's greed, they completely changed their original intention. In the end, it led to the collapse of Dahuan's commerce. Even after Shan Yu's rebirth, it still hadn't recovered. We know, this matter needs to be done slowly. Shen Yu believed that Shang Junlin could do it well. To be honest, Shang Junlin's ability as a ruler was much stronger than the king of Yu. She didn't know what the person who wrote the book was thinking, letting the king of Yu ascend the throne. According to what Shen Yu knew of her previous life, even if the king of Yu ascended the throne, Dahuan wouldn't be able to go far under his leadership. The inside was rotten, and there were strong enemies spying on the outside. On the surface, it seemed to be thriving, but in reality, it was a building on the verge of collapse. Shen Yu nestled in Shang Junlin's arms and slowly yawned. Your Majesty, isn't the court examination time coming soon? That's right. Does you want to go with us to take a look? Shang Junlin gently stroked Shen Yu's back and said in a gentle tone. He selfishly wanted Shen Yu to go with him. Because of entering the palace, Shen Yu lost the opportunity to take the imperial examination and become an official. Although Shen Yu said that he didn't care, Shang Junlin still wanted to bring him to personally experience it. What identity do I have to go with? Disguise as a little eunuch serving your Majesty? Chapter 71. Shang Junlin imagined Shen Yu wearing a little eunuch's uniform and following behind him. His eyes darkened. In the end, he couldn't bear it. I'll ask someone to set up a screen. You can sit behind it. Shen Yu bumped into him. Does your Majesty want to take revenge on me for placing you behind the screen? At that time, Shen Yu wanted to establish his authority in Yuzhong Palace, and Shang Junlin refused to go anywhere else. Shen Yu had no choice but to ask someone to set up a big screen in the main hall and let Shang Junlin sit behind it. Am I so petty in your eyes? Shang Junlin pinched Shan Yu's cheek. Shen Yu muttered in a low voice, Your Majesty has used Shan Qingran's letter to me to take advantage of me a few times. Shang Junlin's ears were sharp, so he clearly heard this sentence. He pinched Shan Yu's cheek and shook it from side to side. If you didn't refuse, why would I find these excuses? He wished that other men's names would never appear beside Shan Yu's ears. Shen Yu didn't want to admit this. He shook off Shang Junlin's hand. Your Majesty likes to torture people. How can you blame others? If Shang Junlin didn't push his luck again and again, would Shen Yu have to find ways to refuse? Yes, it's all my fault. I didn't work hard enough and didn't make you comfortable. Shang Junlin let go of Shen Yu's soft cheek and kissed the reddened part. Shen Yu was rendered speechless by Shang Junlin's deliberate distortion of his meaning. He finally understood that he had no chance of winning against Shang Junlin in this matter. He sat up straight and patted Shang Junlin's shoulder to vent his anger. Your Majesty has worked very hard. Really, if you work harder, you can find someone else. She was already tormenting him to no end. What else did she want? You can't say such things carelessly. Shang Junlin forcefully held Shen Yu's waist and pulled her into his arms. Then, he fiercely bit Shen Yu's lips. Ugh, Shen Yu cried out in pain. Soon, he tasted the taste of blood in his mouth. Your Majesty. Jin doesn't like to hear such words. Shang Junlin released Shen Yu's mouth and gently kissed away the blood on his lips. Jin's everything can only be yours. The man's aura was terrifying, like a storm that swept through everything. Shen Yu, who was in the center of the whirlpool, could deeply feel Shang Junlin's mood at this moment. All right, Your Majesty, I'm just talking nonsense. Shen Yu chased after Shang Junlin. When he was about to leave, she took the initiative to kiss his lips. Of course, Your Majesty is mine. No one can take Your Majesty away from me. Under the comfort of Shen Yu, Shang Junlin's terrifying aura gradually calmed down. He didn't take back the initiative immediately. Instead, he enjoyed Shen Yu's rare initiative. There was a faint fragrance on the young man's body. It was very light and could only be smelled when one was close to him. Shang Junlin liked this smell very much. Shin Yu didn't go deep. Instead, he just rubbed his lips. His lips were still injured, so the faint taste of blood spread in their mouths. Feeling that Shang Junlin had calmed down, Shin Yu gradually withdrew. How could Shang Junlin let go of such a good opportunity? At the moment when they were about to separate, he moved his hand behind Shan Yu's head and used a little force. Shin Yu was forced to bump into him. Compared to before, Shang Junlin's kiss was much gentler this time. Although it was gentle, it had a strong force that couldn't be refused. Under the leafy tree, the man in black tightly held the blue-clothed young man in his arms. The shadows of the trees danced, and occasionally, a few birds circled above their heads. A breeze blew, and the branches and leaves swayed, causing waves of ripples. The mottled light fell on their heads and bodies. The swing gently swayed with their movements. It was a quiet afternoon, and everything was leisurely and beautiful. After being inspired by Shin Yu, Shang Junlin summoned the important ministers for a discussion. If Shin Yu's idea was to be implemented, the existing laws regarding merchants in Dahuan must be changed. After proposing Shin Yu's idea, the imperial study room fell into a long silence. After a long time, the prime minister hesitantly said, "Although this method is against common knowledge, the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages for Dahuan. I think it can be implemented. They're just merchants. Do you think the national treasury will be short of money? Compared to the previous dynasty, Dahuan already treats merchants very well. I don't think it's necessary to give them more preferential treatment. Your Majesty, it's not good for the country to encourage the merchants to be arrogant." Some ministers disagreed. The Minister of Works and the Minister of Revenue looked at each other. This time, they reached an agreement. "Your Majesty, I think this method is feasible. I also agree. Merchants are also citizens of Dahuan. There's no reason to be too harsh on them. We just need to give them more honor and let them have a greater sense of belonging to Dahuan." After arguing back and forth, those who agreed with the idea gained the upper hand. "I don't know who came up with this idea. Such a talented person shouldn't be buried." The Prime Minister had a good impression of the person who came up with this idea. Guijun accidentally mentioned it to me. Speaking of Shin Yu, Shang Junlin's expression softened at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Prime Minister wanted His Majesty to use the person who came up with this idea, but his words were stuck. Since ancient times, the harem couldn't interfere in politics. He sighed heavily in his heart. What a pity. The other ministers also didn't expect this answer. They looked at each other. For a moment, the hall was silent again. In the end, it was the Minister of Works who spoke up. Guijun is a talented person. It's Dahuan's good fortune to be able to receive his help. Shang Junlin had vaguely told him that Shun Yu was the one who came up with the cement recipe. At that time, the Minister of Works had a good impression of Shun Yu. Now that he saw him come up with a way to solve the Ministry of Works' biggest problem, his impression of him was even better. Shang Junlin's expression became gentler. First, come up with a plan for how this will be implemented. Before it is officially implemented, Shang Junlin paused. First, experiment with what the Ministry of Works is currently doing. Yes, Your Majesty. On the way out of the palace, several ministers gathered together to talk. It's really a pity for the child of Count North. In the past, there were rumors that he had deep thoughts. I don't know what Count North was thinking, sending his son into the palace. In that kind of situation, who didn't know that being sent into the palace was equivalent to being abandoned? The only son, Count North, was given up just like that. It was really an eye-opener. At that time, Count Zhenbei favored his concubine and her child. Later, the child was involved in the matter of Prince Yu. In my opinion, the son of the first wife is the son of the first wife. Not any Tom, Dick, or Harry can climb to the head of the first wife. Count Zhenbei favored his concubine and gave birth to a child, but did not care about the son of the first wife. That's right. Compared to his son, Shun Guijun is much more outstanding. I don't know if he regrets it now. What's the use of regretting it now? Did Count North regret it? Regret. He regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. After Shun Yu entered the palace, Shen Qingran repeatedly sought death and wiped out the last bit of father-son affection in Count Jinbei's heart. He didn't know if it was Shen Yu's behavior that broke his filter of concubine Mother Ru. Now, no matter how he looked at it, concubine Mother Ru was an ordinary woman who couldn't be more ordinary. He even began to wonder if he, who was infatuated with concubine Mother Ru, had been poisoned. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. After concubine Ru made trouble 2 more times, Count North was only fed up with her. At this time, he was in a terrible state to clean up the mess caused by Shen Qingran, so he impatiently locked concubine Ru up. Concubine Ru, who had been in the limelight for more than 10 years in Count North's mansion, fell down like this, which caused a lot of people in the mansion to sigh. What's wrong with this eldest young master? Once he makes a move, you will have no power to resist. A concubine who had stayed in the mansion for a long time sighed. Yes, a few months ago, who would have thought that concubine Ru, who was treated like a madam in the mansion, would have such a day? After all, she is just a concubine. She relied on Count North's favor to act like a tyrant. I have disliked her for a long time. A legitimate son is a legitimate son. She wants to help her son ascend the throne, but she doesn't know whether Dahuan's laws will allow it. Yes, some people are cheap and biased. If it wasn't for Madam, would she be where she is today? Be careful with your words. You can't mention that person. In the courtyard separated by a wall, concubine Ru clenched her fists tightly, her nails deeply sinking into her flesh. She knew that those people deliberately said it for her to hear. After being suppressed for more than 10 years, she had to seize the opportunity to hit someone when they were down. The news of Count North's mansion was passed to Shen Yu's ears through Mu Shi. Serves them right. Concubine Ru probably didn't expect that there would be a day when the wheel of fortune turns. After reporting the situation of Count North's mansion, Mu Shi was very relieved. However, young master, did you expect everything before you left the mansion? At that time, Mu Shi thought that Shan Yu handed the matter over to Count North to make things convenient for concubine Ru. Not only Mu Shi, but other people in the mansion also thought so at that time. After so many years, Count North's favoritism to concubine Ru was obvious to everyone in the mansion. Handing the matter over to Count North to handle was obviously giving Count North a chance to cover up someone. Shen Yu carelessly fiddled with Junling, which was growing better and better. I just let her know what kind of person Count North is. If I deal with concubine Ru, she will only hate me in her heart. What if the person who sent her to hell was Count North, who had always doted on her? She thought that she had walked into Duke Xinbei's heart, but she didn't know that it was only because she didn't touch Duke Xinbei's interests. You see, I didn't do anything in the palace, but she already knew how heartless Duke Xinbei is. Young master, you are so thoughtful. Shen Yu chuckled and didn't say anything. Killing someone was just a matter of nodding his head. He had many ways to get rid of concubine Ru, but he didn't do it. What he wanted was to let concubine Ru see with her own eyes how hypocritical Duke Xinbei was. She thought that her deep feelings were nothing in Duke Xinbei's eyes. He could give her infinite love and let her do whatever she wanted in Duke Xinbei's mansion, but he could also take back everything and let her be bullied by everyone. She was not worth mentioning in his heart. Her past glory was just a joke. Shen Yu wanted her to deny everything in the past. This made her feel much worse than him doing it himself. The mullein orchid sent by Shang Junlin had passed its flowering period. Shen Yu put the 2 pots of flowers together and looked at them carefully. Are you taking care of these flowers again? Shang Junlin strode in and touched Shen Yu's face. Yu seems to be very happy today. Is it that obvious? Shen Yu touched his face, but forgot that his hand had just touched the mud. His white jade-like face was suddenly stained with mud. Shang Junlin lifted Shen Yu's chin and slowly wiped it for him. Yu, accompany me to the palace examination tomorrow. You don't have to disguise yourself as anyone, just follow me. What you have missed, we will make up for you one by one. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.